Chapter 39:15. He paused for a moment, then continued, "Although I am attached to the golden lotus and have condensed my soul into an immortal body, I am not completely one with the golden lotus. If you want to say anything, I can only say that I am only a temporary host and not the master. Therefore, if you can't move the golden lotus away, then I can only stay here until I cultivate an immortal body." Hearing this, Fengjiu stood up and walked to the side of the pond to look at the golden lotus. The golden lotus had already bloomed, and because it was in the holy land of Buddhism, the light on its body was very dazzling. Around the golden lotus, there were halos of the holy Buddha. She looked at Imo-chan and said, "Let me try." She moved her palm and condensed her spiritual aura. Her sleeves moved with her palm and brushed the golden lotus in the pond. However, she found that after a stream of air passed by, the water surface rippled, but the golden lotus was still floating on the water surface. It only swayed slightly, creating ripples on the water surface. Seeing this, she was slightly surprised and said, "Is it really that strange?" One must know that her inner space was a treasure of heaven and earth. It had been with her for so many years, and she had stored many things in it. It could be said that this situation had never happened before. Imo-chan had a gentle smile on his face. He stood up and waved his sleeves lightly, then straightened his robes and said, "It is difficult to move, but it is not impossible to move." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him and asked, "Then how do we move it?" She just found that her spiritual aura could not get close to the golden lotus and could only brush past it. In other words, if her spiritual aura could not get close, then she could not move the golden lotus away. This ancient golden lotus was in the holy land of Buddhism, and its holy light was very strong. Moreover, it was illuminated by the holy Buddha. Even if her spiritual aura was pure and clean, she could not get close to it. In this way, even if the golden lotus was here, she could not move it away. No, it was actually possible. She knew that if she refined the golden lotus blood drop and fused it with her, she would be able to take it away. However, she could not use this method. Ever since she found out that Imo-chan had used the golden lotus to reconstruct his immortal body, she had planned to let him fuse with the ancient golden lotus. Once he cultivated his immortal body, he would be able to bind it with his blood. Then, not only would the golden lotus become his immortal weapon, it would also help his cultivation level increase greatly, especially since he had used the golden lotus to reconstruct his immortal body. If he had the golden lotus with him, it would be even more beneficial to him. Without waiting for him to speak, Fengjiu continued, "If you can't move it, then let it stay here. You are a holy son. If you cultivate in this Buddhist sacred ground, you might be able to condense an immortal body even faster." Hearing this, Imo-chan smiled and said, "If I leave the golden lotus here, I won't be able to help you when you go against the master of the black lotus in the future. If I move the golden lotus away, even if my immortal body is not formed, I can still use the power of the golden lotus to help you." "You haven't cultivated the immortal blood drop yet?" Fengjiu asked as his gaze fell on Imo-chan. Imo-chan shook his head. "How can it be so easy to cultivate a drop of immortal blood drop? Now that my body is exposed to the sun for a long time, it will become transparent. Moreover, I can't appear for very long every day." Chapter 39:16. Fengjiu frowned and asked worriedly, "If that's the case, won't your soul be injured?" "I won't be injured, but I'll probably fall into a deep sleep again," Imo-chan said. Hearing this, Fengjiu shook her head. "Then let me think of another way." As she spoke, she looked at the golden lotus in the pond. She bent down and touched the water in the pond. She felt a pure and holy power spreading through the water. Perhaps it was because the power of the golden lotus had entered her body through her fingertips, but she felt that the green lotus in her body seemed to be releasing the power of the green lotus. She was surprised. Moving her palm, she guided the aura of the golden lotus into her body. After a while, she felt that the green lotus in her body that had been sleeping for a long time had awakened. She was overjoyed. She turned around and said, "Imo-chan." However, as soon as the words left her mouth, she froze. She looked at Mo Chen's body, which had become even more transparent than before. She was shocked and hurried to his side. What happened to you? Why did your body become transparent? Mo Chen smiled and comforted her. It's nothing, don't worry. Your body is already like this, and you're still fine. How did you? Halfway through her sentence, she suddenly paused and turned to look at the golden lotus in the pond. Then she looked at Mo Chen. Is it because I guided the aura of the golden lotus in my body? Is that right? He smiled gently. It's all right. Didn't I tell you? I won't disappear so easily. It's just that my body is a little weaker. I'm sorry, I didn't think. She lowered her head apologetically, feeling very guilty. It's all right. You don't have to say sorry. He raised his hand and wanted to rub her hair. Then he put his hand down and smiled gently. Did the aura of the golden lotus awaken the green lotus in your body? Yes, she replied. If that's the case, then you should cultivate here first. Not only the aura of the golden lotus, even the immortal Buddha aura here is beneficial to you. After hearing him say this more than once, she couldn't help but hesitate. She looked at him and said, but if that's the case, wouldn't you? Just now, she had only used her fingertip to draw the chi of the golden lotus into his body, and he had already become like this. If he cultivated here, wouldn't his newly condensed celestial body be beaten back to its original form? I won't. He shook his head gently and said, you can absorb the aura released by the ancient golden lotus to cultivate. That way, it won't harm me at all, and it won't harm the ancient golden lotus at all. At the same time, it can help you increase your strength. Hearing this, she said, all right, I'll try to cultivate here first. Let's see if I can move the golden lotus out after the green lotus recovers. I've been out for a long time today. I have to go back first. As he spoke, he glanced at her, and with a tap of his foot, he walked towards the golden lotus in the pond. Fengzhu watched as his figure turned into a ray of golden light and disappeared into the ancient golden lotus. He couldn't help but be stunned. Mo Chen really did still exist, and he had obtained such an opportunity. The celestial body formed by the ancient golden lotus would be an immortal body in the future. It would be even better than Fengzhu's. Chapter 39:17. She had absorbed quite a bit of the golden lotus aura just now, so she wanted to take a look around first. After looking around, she walked into the forest. When Leng Hua woke up outside, it was already the next morning. He rubbed his aching head and got out of bed. When he thought of the scene before he fainted, he quickly got out of bed, put on his clothes, and walked out. Unexpectedly, as soon as the door opened, he saw monk Ijia sitting outside, eating a steamed bun and porridge. Benefactor, you're awake? Come and eat with us. Monk Ijia said. He didn't even look at Leng Hua and continued eating his porridge. The little monk who was waiting at the side looked at Leng Hua and went forward. Benefactor, you haven't washed up yet, right? You can wash up later. Before he finished, he added, the steamed bun and porridge are still warm. Master Ijia, where's my master? Leng Hua walked forward and asked. The monk didn't speak and just ate quietly. When the little monk saw this, he said, Benefactor, my master doesn't speak when he's eating vegetarian food. Why don't you wash up first? Seeing that Master Ijia had no intention of speaking, Leng Hua paused for a moment and went to the back to wash up. When he returned, Ijia had already finished eating while wiping the corners of his mouth. Thus, he asked again, Master Ijia, how's my master now? Only then did Monk Ijia look at him and say, Amit Ba, Benefactor, don't worry. Your master has entered the Buddhist sacred land and hasn't come out yet. Buddhist sacred land? Will she be in danger? Leng Hua asked worriedly. He remembered that Monk Bamei flicked his sleeve and his master disappeared. How did she go to the Buddhist sacred land? With that female benefactor's cultivation and willpower, even if there's danger, it shouldn't be a problem for her. He stood up and clasped his hands together. Benefactor, if you're not used to living on this mountain, you can go down the mountain on your own. If you're used to living here, you can come to the hall to listen to Buddhist teachings. This penniless monk will take his leave first. Leng Hua stood up and hurriedly returned the greeting. Take care, master. He watched as the two of them turned and walked out. When they were out of the courtyard, he sat down and took out his communication tablet to report what had happened to the Yama Lord. In a courtyard in the city, the two children were crying because Fengjiu was not by their side. Qin Xin and Bai Qingxin were holding small toys to coax them. After Xianyuan Mose left the room, he came to the courtyard and saw the two children crying nonstop. He asked, "Did you feed them?" "Yes, both of them drank a bowl of goat milk," Qin Xin said. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose said, "Bring it over." The two of them looked at each other before carrying the two children forward. Xianyuan Mose took one in each hand and held the two children in his arms. As soon as the two children were carried by him, perhaps because they smelled the familiar scent on his body, they gradually stopped crying. They just blinked their watery eyes and looked at him with tears. Looking at the two children's innocent eyes, Xianyuan Mose's heart softened. He lowered his head and kissed the two children's foreheads. He said softly, "Your mother went out, but she'll be back soon. So before she comes back, Daddy will accompany you. You have to be good and not cry. Okay?" Chapter 39:18. When Leng Shuang and the others in the courtyard saw this scene, they could not help but reveal a smile. It seemed that the Yama Lord had a way out. Xianyuan Mose played with the two children. After they fell asleep, he asked Qin Xin to carry them into the room. After serving tea, Hui Lang stood aside and said, "Master, Madam only took Leng Hua to the myriad Buddhist sect. Will she be in danger? Shall we go and have a look?" "No need." Xianyuan Mose took a sip of tea and said, "She can solve it by herself." As soon as his voice fell, Leng Hua seemed to have noticed something. He turned his palm, and a communication jade card appeared in his hand. When he injected his spiritual power into it, Leng Hua's voice also entered their ears. Except for Qin Xin and Bai Qingcheng, who were taking care of the two children in the room, the others were in the courtyard. At this time, when they heard Leng Hua's voice from the communication jade token, they couldn't help but look at each other. They listened to Leng Hua's story about what happened in the myriad Buddhist sect. When they heard that Master was sent to the holy land of the Buddhism sect by a white-browed monk, they couldn't help but look at Xianyuan Mose. However, they saw that he just put away the transmission jade token and didn't say anything. "Master, Madam has entered the holy land of the Buddhism sect. Will she be in danger?" Hui Lang asked worriedly. They were all here, but Madam was the only one who entered the holy land. They didn't know if she would be in danger. After all, Madam's strength had not recovered to its peak. Leng Hua is really something. Why didn't he go in with her? At least he could take care of her. Hui Lang muttered. Even if Leng Hua wanted to go in with her, he couldn't do it without their permission. What's more, since they said it was a holy land, they naturally wouldn't let people in casually. Chi Kong said in a calm voice. Then he added, "However, Master's adaptability is enough to deal with anything. We should have confidence in her. Disperse. Go do whatever you need to do. There's no need to crowd around here." Xianyuan Mose raised his hand and gestured for them to leave. Yes. Everyone responded, bowed, and retreated. Only Qin Xin and Leng Shuang were left waiting at the door. Xianyuan Mose took a sip of tea and looked at the blue sky. He thought to himself, "I wonder if she got the golden lotus?" After entering the Buddhist sacred ground, when would he return? At this time, he did not know what Fengjiu had encountered in the myriad Buddhist sect. Compared with their worries, Fengjiu seemed to be very relaxed. She walked around the Buddhist holy land and found that it was too big for her to walk through. Therefore, she just walked around. When she returned to the pool, she looked at the dazzling golden lotus in full bloom. As she sat down cross-legged and put her hands on her body to cultivate. As her whole body and mind relaxed, her state of mind also reached a state of calmness that had never been seen before. Her entire body relaxed as she gently absorbed the aura of the golden lotus in the air. What she didn't expect was that her meditation lasted for half a month. Chapter 39:19. Why did you stop? Imo-chan asked. She adjusted the energy in her body and stood up, saying, "My strength has increased too quickly in half a month. I can't just advance like this. I still need an opportunity." She looked at him and saw that his energy seemed to have stabilized. She asked, "How about you? Are you feeling better?" Imo-chan smiled. Yes, with the energy of the golden lotus nourishing my spirit, I'm recovering faster. Fengjiu nodded and looked at the golden lotus in the pool, saying, I didn't think that I would cultivate for half a month. They must be waiting anxiously. Let me try again and see if I can move the golden lotus away. Okay, Imogen replied, and stood up to watch from the side. In half a month, not only had her strength increased, even the green lotus in her body had regained its vitality. This was something she did not expect before she left. She had not seen her children for half a month after leaving home. She could not wait to go back and see them. At that moment, she gathered her thoughts and gently exhaled. She closed her eyes and felt the energy inside. At the same time, she activated the green lotus energy in her body. A wisp of green lotus energy flowed out from her body and slowly came to the palm of her hand. Following the flow of spiritual energy from her palm, the green lotus energy enveloped the golden lotus in the pool. The green aura gradually approached the ancient golden lotus. Perhaps the ancient golden lotus had sensed the same aura as the ancient golden lotus, but did not reject the green lotus aura until the green lotus aura enveloped the ancient golden lotus. In the next moment, Fengjiu's heart moved. A golden light flashed, and the ancient golden lotus in the pond was moved into her space. It was also at that moment that Imo-chun transformed into a ray of golden light and vanished on the spot. She didn't even have the time to say a single word to Fengjiu. The ground suddenly shook violently. Fengjiu hurriedly steadied herself, but she couldn't resist the violent shaking. Suddenly, a suction force sucked her out. She only felt her vision blur, and when she reappeared, she was already in the main hall. Master! In the main hall, Leng Hua hurriedly got up to support Fengjiu, whose body swayed slightly and almost fell. He was pleasantly surprised by her appearance. The other monks in the hall looked up at the trembling Buddha statue. Sitting on the ground, they also felt the ground tremble. However, with Fengjiu's appearance, the tremors gradually dissipated and returned to normal. They couldn't help but turn their heads and look at the woman in red standing in the middle of the hall. They didn't expect her to have stayed inside for half a month. Moreover, the tremors indicated that she had already taken the ancient golden lotus from the Holy Land. Amitabha, white eyebrows, put his palms together and murmured. He slowly stood up and looked at Fengjiu. Benefactor, you are indeed an extraordinary person. Fengjiu returned the salute and asked, Immortal Buddha Ichan, what do you need me to do? A few months ago, the Sarira and a Heart Sutra in the Jiuxiao Pagoda of the Myriad Buddhist sect were stolen. The person who stole the Sarira and the Heart Sutra is my disciple. At this point, he lowered his head in shame and chanted Amitabha. He paused for a moment and then said, I hope that benefactor can help me find those two items. This is one thing. Chapter 39:20. Monk White Eyebrows paused for a moment, then put his palms together and said, Amitabha, he is dead. The old monk lowered his eyes with a trace of sadness and said, he lost his mind for a moment. After stealing our magic treasure, he was killed by the person who ordered him to do so. Fengjiu was silent and did not say a word. One could tell that even though He Yichan, Immortal Buddha's disciple, had disappointed him by stealing their sect's holy item, He Yichan's face was still filled with grief at the mention of his death. It was clear that He Yichan had deep feelings for his disciple. The second thing, Monk White Eyebrows paused for a moment, then looked at Fengjiu and said, Benefactor, you are the star of Phoenix and the Lord of heaven and earth. You are destined to come to our Myriad Buddhist sect. The second thing is that I hope you can protect our Myriad Buddhist sect for 100 years. If within 100 years, our Myriad Buddhist sect suffers a great calamity, please be lenient for the sake of the golden lotus you gave us today. When the monks in the hall heard this, they were shocked and involuntarily looked at Zen Immortal Buddha with shock and doubt. Why would the Immortal Buddha ask her for this? Would their Myriad Buddhist sect suffer a great calamity within 100 years? Moreover, the Star of Phoenix, the Lord of heaven and earth, was she the benefactor called Fengjiu? If the Myriad Buddhist sect was really in trouble, Would she be able to help the myriad Buddha's sect avoid this calamity? For a moment, the monks looked at Fengjiu with complicated expressions. They did not say a word and just thought about it in their hearts. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly surprised. A great calamity? She looked at Zen, Immortal Buddha, and saw his solemn expression. So she said, Immortal Buddha, don't worry. I, Fengjiu, promise you. As long as the myriad Buddha's sect needs my help in the future, I will not refuse. She paused and thought for a moment. Looking at the great Buddha in the hall, she said, I am indebted to the myriad Buddha's sect today, and there will be a time for me to repay the kindness. Today, I will leave a wisp of divine thought here. If that day really comes, I will do my best to help. As she spoke, she condensed a strand of divine sense and flicked it into the Buddha's sacred realm. In the future, if the myriad Buddha's sect really faced a great calamity, even if they didn't need to tell her, the divine thought left here would let her know when the Buddha moved. Amitabha, thank you, benefactor. The white-browed monk murmured softly and continued. This journey points to disaster. Therefore, please allow Ijia to travel with you. He will tell you what you need to know along the way. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but look at the monk standing beside White Brow. He smiled and said, Let Master Ijia travel with me? That's not a good idea, is it? He was a monk, and she was a woman. If they were traveling together, she wouldn't mind. However, she was afraid of ruining the reputation of the great monk. Moreover, this monk was a martial ancestor in the myriad Buddha's sect. How could she ask him to follow her everywhere? Thinking of this, Fengjiu laughed. Unexpectedly, White Brow looked at Fengjiu and said solemnly, Benefactor, this journey is dangerous. Moreover, you will face a bloody calamity. You have to be careful. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu stopped smiling. She looked at White Brow and said, I will face a bloody calamity. Chapter 39:21. When she went out, she didn't feel anything if she encountered danger. What she was most afraid of was that her children would be implicated because of her. After all, now that she was a mother, her first concern was her children's safety. That's right. Monk Baimei nodded and said, But don't worry too much. Your fated star is shining high, so you will be able to turn misfortune into blessing. Hearing this, Fengjiu frowned slightly. She bowed to him and said, I know. Thank you, Immortal Buddha. Ijia, you can go with the benefactor. Monk Baimei said to Monk Ijia beside him. Yes. He put his palms together and answered. Seeing this, Fengjiu said, I've been here for more than half a month. It's time to go down the mountain. Masters, goodbye. She bowed to them as she spoke. Amitabha, take care, benefactor. The monks put their palms together and murmured softly. Master Ijia, do you need to pack your things? Fengjiu looked at the monk. Amitabha, as a monk, everything is empty. There's no need to pack anything. I'll go down the mountain with you, benefactor. Monk Ijia said, frowning slightly. In that case, let's go. She cupped her hands to the crowd and turned to walk out. Monk Ijia bowed to Monk Baimei and the others and left with Fengjiu. Watching them leave, until their figures disappeared from sight, someone finally couldn't help but ask, Immortal Buddha, will there be a great disaster in the next 100 years? Monk Baimei put his palms together and said, Yes, there will be a great disaster in the myriad Buddha's sect within 100 years. However, even I don't know when it will be. I can only ask her to protect us for 100 years. I hope she can help us get through this disaster. Hearing this, the monks couldn't help but look at each other with astonishment in their eyes. One of them asked again, Immortal Buddha, who is that benefactor? They only knew that he said she was the master of heaven and earth and the phoenix star, but they didn't know where this came from. She is blessed by the heavens. White Brow said. He looked at the sky outside and walked out slowly. On the other side, Fengjiu and Lung Hua went down the mountain. Compared to the two of them when they went up the mountain, there was an additional monk beside them when they went down the mountain. Along the way, Master Ijia told Fengjiu about some of the things that had happened. Then, he quietly walked beside them. After Fengjiu memorized the information, he smiled and said, Great Master Ijia, I've been away from the mountain for more than half a month. I miss my children and my husband very much, so I'll have to discuss this with my husband when I get home. If they don't come along, I'll probably have to stay at home for 2 more days to accompany my children. At that time, I'll have to ask you to stay for the time being. Amit Ba, I'll follow your arrangement, he said slowly, indicating that he had no objections. Perhaps it was because he thought that he could return to see the children, Mose, and the rest. Feng Jiu's mood became cheerful. On this trip up the mountain, other than obtaining the Golden Lotus, she also knew that Mo Chen also had such an opportunity. She was really happy. Chapter 39:22. The distance between the myriad Buddhist sect and the city where Xianyuan Mose was located was not close. Therefore, when Feng Jiu and the others returned to the city, the sky had already darkened. Lanterns were hung high everywhere in the city, especially the red lanterns hanging on the shops on both sides of the street, which became a beautiful scene in the market. Men and women were walking along the street in groups of 3 or 5. Children were running and playing on the street. The hawkers' cries and the pedestrians' whispers mixed together to form a lively and peaceful scene. Feng Jiu looked at the wind chimes on the street, which made a crisp and pleasant sound in the wind. So, he stopped and walked toward the stall. The monk stopped and looked at Feng Jiu, who was dressed in red with a smile on his face. He picked a string of wind chimes and a colorful pinwheel from the stall. His eyes flashed slightly. She was the destined phoenix star, the lord of heaven and earth. However, she was also the mother of 2 children. Like ordinary mothers, she always thought of her 2 children. Master, it's just ahead. Feng Jiu put the 2 small gifts into the space. After saying this to Monk Ijia, he continued to walk forward. After crossing the street and turning into an alley, the monk looked at the quiet house in front of him and then looked at the man who knocked on the door. Knock, knock. Who is it? Luo Yu's voice came from inside. After a while, the door opened. When Luo Yu saw Feng Jiu and the others standing outside, he could not help but smile in surprise. Master, Leng Hua, you're back. This is great. Come in, come in. Why is there a monk behind you? Luo Yu said, looking back. The more he looked at the monk, the more familiar he felt. He said, this monk looks very familiar. This is Master Ijia, Feng Jiu said with a smile. Oh, Luo Yu replied, his gaze still lingering on the monk. Why did Master come back with a monk? Master, please. Feng Jiu turned sideways and made a gesture of invitation. Almsgiver, please. The monk did not go first, but let Feng Jiu go first. Feng Jiu smiled and walked inside. He said to Leng Hua, clean up a room for Master Ijia to rest and prepare some vegetarian food. Yes, Master. Don't worry. I'll arrange it, Leng Hua said. After entering the house, Leng Hua took the monk to rest, while Luo Yu and Feng Jiu went to the backyard. Looking at Master, whom he had not seen for half a month, Luo Yu hurriedly asked, Master, have you got the ancient golden lotus? Why did the monk come with you? I got the ancient golden lotus. As for him, I promised the myriad Buddhas sect to do something for them, so Master Ijie came with me. As Feng Jiu spoke, she walked to the backyard and asked, how is everything at home while I was away? Hearing her question, Luo Yu grinned and said, don't worry, Master. Everyone is fine. In the beginning, the 2 little masters would cry and make a fuss when they were sleeping. However, with Yin Zhu's coaxing, they no longer made a fuss. Furthermore, they eat a lot every day and have grown a little bigger than when Master left. Feng Jiu was relieved. That's good. Master, you're back. Du Fan saw her and bowed with a smile. I'm back, Feng Jiu replied. Chapter 39:23. Feng Jiu looked at them and nodded slightly. Yes. They smiled and didn't follow him into the courtyard. Instead, they stood outside and watched their master walk into the courtyard. Then, Chi Kong said to the people around him, it seems that there will be a lot of fun tonight. Ha ha ha. Master is finally back. No matter what, it should be lively. How about this? I'll go to the restaurant in the city to book a table of food and have them send it over directly. Du Fan said with a smile. He closed the fan in his hand and patted Hui Lang on the shoulder. Master has been gone for half a month. Let them have a good time. You don't have to go in and join in the fun. If you have any questions, it won't be too late to ask at dinner. You're right. Then I'll go with you to book a table. Huilang grinned and put his arm around Du Fan's shoulder. Luo Yu touched his chin and said thoughtfully, if you're going to book a table, it's best to order a few vegetarian dishes. There was a big monk who came back with Master just now. Hearing this, everyone was slightly surprised. They looked at each other and said, Big monk? Why is there a monk? He came back with Master and Leng Hua? Yes, it's Master Ijia. We met him on the way. We just entered the door together. Now Master asked Leng Hua to take him to the guest room to rest first, Luo Yu said. Hearing this, Du Fan nodded. I see. Then we'll order a few vegetarian dishes when we book a table. That's all for now. We'll talk later. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out with Huilang. As they walked, they discussed which restaurant had the best food and wine. Leng Hua and Qin Xian, who were waiting outside the room in the courtyard, saw Fengjiu come back. They hurriedly went forward and bowed. Master. Well, you can leave now, Fengjiu said. He opened the door and walked inside. In the room, on the bed, Xinyuan Mose was lying on his side. He supported his head with one hand and watched the two children rolling around on the bed, squeaking. He sometimes stretched out his hand to tease the two children, making them giggle. At this moment, a familiar breath approached. He was slightly surprised. When he looked back, he saw a red figure hugging him from behind. A familiar voice with a smile came into his ears. I'm back. Xinyuan Mo smirked and turned to lie on his side. Reaching out, he pulled her into his embrace and kissed her. After the kiss, he let go of her and said, Why were you gone for so long? Did everything go well? Fengjiu smiled, lying on his chest, and said, Well, the people of the Million Buddhas sect didn't embarrass me. They sent me to a holy place of their Buddhist sect. I saw the ancient golden lotus there, and there was an unexpected surprise. As she said, she got up, picked up her two children, and kissed their pink little faces. She smiled and called, My babies, come on, let me kiss you again. The two children smelled the familiar breath on her body, and their little faces showed a happy expression. They rubbed in her arms like two little puppies, and their little mouths were in a mess, as if they were looking for something. Seeing this, Xinyuan Mo sat up. He reached out and lifted his son from Fengjiu's chest, put him on the bed, and said, Go and play. Chapter 39:24. The little guy was very happy. He stretched out his chubby hands to hug Fengjiu's face and giggled, making Fengjiu chuckle as well. Xinyuan Mose looked at his wife and children, his eyes overflowing with gentleness and love. After a while, he asked, Did you say there was an unexpected surprise? Hearing this, Fengjiu hugged the two children, sat on the bed and looked at him, saying, I saw Mo Chun in the sacred land of Buddhism. Xinyuan Mose was slightly surprised, saying, You saw Mo Chun in the sacred land of Buddhism? An illusion? No, it's real. He still exists. Fengjiu said with a serious expression. However, he is indeed dead. Only a part of his soul is left in this world. The power of his soul is condensed in the golden lotus seed that he left behind. The power of his soul somehow went to the sacred land of Buddhism and attached itself to the golden lotus. This time, I went to the sacred land of Buddhism to look for the ancient golden lotus and found out that he still existed. Hearing Fengjiu's words, Xinyuan Mose frowned slightly, saying, Could it be an illusion? He clearly disappeared from this world. How could there be a part of his soul left in this world? As he said this, he held her hands with both hands and said in a low voice, Are you still blaming yourself for his death? Is that why you had such an illusion? He saw with his own eyes that the person disappeared from this world. Not even a part of his body was left behind. How could he still exist in this world? Fengjiu smiled, saying, At first, I didn't believe that he still existed. I thought it was an illusion after entering the sacred land. But later, it was confirmed that he really did exist. He really did exist. She paused for a moment before continuing. However, his soul is very weak right now. Because he was attached to the ancient golden lotus for so long, he was able to condense his celestial body. This time, when I moved the ancient golden lotus from the Buddhist holy land into my space, he also entered my space. So he is now in your space? Xianyuan Mose asked. Fengjiu nodded. Yes, he attached himself to the ancient golden lotus. Now that the ancient golden lotus is in my space, he is naturally in it. However, because his soul and immortal body are unstable, he can't appear for long. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo smiled, saying, if that's the case, then that's good. As for the fact that he was still alive and had obtained such an opportunity, she would no longer feel guilty or blame herself for what he had done for her in the future. Tomorrow I'll see if I can let him come out and meet you. I told him that our son and daughter recognized him as their adoptive father. Fengjiu smiled, looking at the two children rolling on the bed. Come. As Xianyuan Mo spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, in that case, you wouldn't be able to absorb the power of the golden lotus? Yes, I'm thinking of letting Mo Chun inherit the ancient golden lotus's power. His spirit is attached to the ancient golden lotus. This is his opportunity. Moreover, it's good that he obtained this power. At least he won't be our enemy. When we deal with the Devil Lord in the future, if he has already achieved immortal body, he will naturally be able to lend us a hand. Chapter 39:25. There's one more thing. Fengjiu looked at her and said, the 1,000 Buddhas sect gave me the golden lotus and asked me to do something for them. She simply told him what the white-browed monk had asked her to do and said, so when I came back this time, the monk called Ijia also came back with me. He said that he wanted to go with me. In addition, the white-browed monk also asked me to protect the 1,000 Buddhas sect for 100 years. If there is a catastrophe within 100 years, I have to help them. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose asked, what are you going to do? Do you want to go by yourself or with us? Fengjiu couldn't help but look at the two children with reluctance in her eyes. This time, I went to the 1,000 Buddhas sect and stayed for half a month. If I go to help them find the Saraira, I don't know how much time it will take. When I think of not being able to see the two children, I feel reluctant. But if I take them with me, I'm worried that they will be in danger and be in danger. At this time, she was also in a dilemma. Xianyuan Mose pondered for a while and said, in that case, take the two children with you. There will be no problem with so many people. What's more, if you go on this trip, you probably won't come back for a year and a half. In this case, it's better to go together, lest the two children can't recognize you. Really? What if there's really danger on the road? She reached out and poked little Yu-er, who had climbed onto her leg. Xianyuan Mo smiled and said, take them with you. If there is danger, we will protect them. What's more, with so many of us, what danger could be difficult for us? Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a while and said, that's true. Okay, then let's go together. But let's rest for 2 days before we set off. My green lotus has awakened. Let me see if I can cure your leg. Okay, Xianyuan Mose responded. Seeing that she was about to roll up the corner of his trousers, he immediately reached out and grabbed her hand and said, you just came back, so take a rest first. My leg is not in a hurry. It's okay, I'm not tired. And I also want to know if my current power of green lotus can cure your leg. As she spoke, she got out of bed and rolled up his trousers. First, she massaged his leg, and then used silver needles to stimulate the circulation of his acupoints. After a while, she condensed a green qi in her palm and covered his knees, trying to use the qi of green lotus to restore the feeling in his legs. Xianyuan Mose looked at her quietly, his eyes full of gentle affection. He looked at her focused and serious face and thought of something. Ajio, how long will it take for Mo Chun to cultivate an immortal body? Is at most. It is at most. As for when Mo Chun will be able to cultivate the immortal body, I really don't know. She paused for a moment before continuing. But with Mo Chun's talent and luck, perhaps it won't take more than a few years. She raised her head and looked at him. Tapping his knee, she asked, do you feel anything? Chapter 39:26. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu broke into a smile. It seems like it's still somewhat useful. She used the green lotus qi to treat him for a while until a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. Only then did she withdraw her hand and say, I'll try again tomorrow. Have Lung Shuang and the others prepare some water for you. Go take a bath, he said slowly as he pulled down his trousers. Okay, Feng Jie replied. She got up and walked outside to call out. When she saw Leng Hua outside the courtyard, she walked over and asked, Have you settled, great master, Yijie? I've already settled, master, Leng Hua said with a smile. I heard from them that Du Fan and Hui Lang want to book a banquet. They're planning to have some fun tonight. Feng Jie nodded and said, That's good too. Let's set the banquet in the front courtyard. All right, remember to order a few vegetarian dishes for Great Master Yijie. They know that Great Master Yijie will also be there, so they'll order a few vegetarian dishes. Leng Hua asked again, Master, are we leaving together or what? If we leave together, I'll have to deal with the matters of this residence first. Let's go together. I just talked to Mose. He said that we'll leave together so that we can look after each other along the way. Besides, we don't know how long we'll be gone this time, Feng Jie said. She was still a little worried when she thought of the bloody disaster that the white-browed monk had mentioned. If they left together, she was really worried that they would implicate the two children. However, if she sent the two children away, she couldn't bear to and wouldn't feel at ease. No matter what, she wouldn't feel at ease. Bringing them along with her would make her feel at ease. Forget it, forget it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let nature take its course. All right then. I'll deal with the matters of the residence first tomorrow, Leng Hua said. He bowed and left first. Master, the bath water is ready. Leng Shuang came over and said. Okay, Feng Jie said, then turned and walked back. After taking a bath, she changed into a new set of clothes and dried her hair. She thought of the little toys she had bought on the way back to play with, so she walked into the inner room with a smile. Why aren't these two little fellows sleeping? Aren't you tired of rolling around on the bed? She smiled and sat down by the bed. She reached out and rubbed the two children's little heads. Looking at the two identical little faces, she couldn't help but smile. Mose, look at our son and daughter. Why are they so cute? When you grow up in the future, do you think it will still be the same? The corners of Xianyuan Mose's lips curled up slightly. His eyes were filled with love as he looked at the two fair and tender children. He said, When they grow up in the future, their appearances will only become more and more beautiful. However, although the two of them look the same, their personalities are as different as heaven and earth. That's true. Our son's character is like yours, and our daughter is like mine. She smiled and took out a wind chime and a windmill from her space. Little babies, look at what this is. The wind chime gently shook, producing a clear and melodious sound. The rainbow-colored windmill spun, causing the two children to giggle. They stretched out their chubby little hands. Want to take it? Do you want it? You don't know how to play with it yet. Mother will let you play with it. She smiled and teased the two children. The rainbow-colored windmill spun in her hand. As the windmill spun, the rainbow-colored ribbons flew. It was very beautiful. Come, let's go to the front and prepare to eat. She hung the wind chime by the window, then placed the windmill at the head of the small bed where the children slept. Only then did she go forward to pick up the two children. Chapter 39:27. Feng Jie was all smiles as she carried the two children in her arms, one in each hand. Only when she carried them in her arms did she realize how heavy these two little fellows were. Moreover, they were wearing a lot of clothes, and their whole bodies were plump. No, I can't carry two. She hastily put down one of them, fearing that the child in her arms would twist and fall. Leng Shuang, come in and carry the child. Xianyuan Mose called out and let Leng Shuang, who was outside, come in and help carry one child. Leng Shuang, who was waiting outside the room, came in and took the child from Feng Jie. He said, Master, Yama Lord, the banquet in front has already been set up. You can go over now. In, you take Yu'er over first. We'll come in a while. Feng Jie said, and let him carry little Yu'er to the front. Yes, Leng Shuang answered. After bowing, he carried the child and retreated. Xianyuan Mose got down from the bed and sat in the wheelchair. Looking at her carrying the child, he said, Let's go. Little Mu Chun obediently stayed in Feng Jie's arms. He didn't make a fuss and only quietly looked at her. That well-behaved little appearance made Feng Jie couldn't help but lower her head and kiss him. Son, Mother will take you to the front to have some fun. Seeing her kiss his son again, Xianyuan Mose couldn't help but say, "This boy can't always be kissed. He'll be shy in the future." Fengjiu's beautiful eyes smiled as she glanced at him and said, "Yes, yes, yes. If you can't kiss a son, then kissing a daughter is fine, right? Cough, you can also kiss me." He lightly coughed as he looked at her with his deep black eyes. Hearing these words, Fengjiu teasingly smiled. "I still remember that time when I accidentally kissed you. You directly fainted." Hearing her mention this matter, Xianyuan Mose was embarrassed and said, "Let's not talk about the past. Let's go. I don't want them to wait too long." As he spoke, he pushed the wheelchair out. Seeing him walk out, Fengjiu pursed his lips and smiled. He carried the child and followed beside him. In front of them, everyone was gathered. They did not put several tables together. Instead, there was a small rectangular table in front of two people with wine and dishes on it. Where's Leng Hua? Why haven't I seen him yet?" Huilang looked around and didn't see Leng Hua, so he asked. He went to invite Master Yijie. As Du Fan spoke, he placed wine on everyone's table and said with a smile, "Master has been away for half a month, and we've also been idle here for half a month. Now that Master has returned, it feels much livelier. Leng Shuang is here. Is he carrying little Mu Chun or little Yuer?" Luo Yu stood up and wanted to check on the child, but Hui Lang was faster. He stood up and pressed a hand on Luo Yu's shoulder, forcing him to sit down. "Just sit down. I'll carry the little master here." Hui Lang grinned and patted his shoulder. He quickly walked over to Leng Shuang and asked, "Leng Shuang, is the child you're carrying little Yuer?" "Yes," Leng Shuang replied. Then he stepped forward and reached out to take the child from her. Little Yu was more lively and active. She was used to everyone fighting to carry her, so she didn't cry when Hui Lang carried her. Instead, she giggled and her saliva stained his lapel. Chapter 39:28. Luo Yu cast a glance at him and said, "What kind of uncle are you?" As he spoke, he also stood up and walked toward him, saying, all right. You'll be fine after holding her for a while. Let me hold her. Hui Lang dodged with the child in his arms and said, "What's there to hold? I've only just taken it from you. I haven't even hugged her yet." As he spoke, he retreated until he seemed to have bumped into someone behind him. "Be careful. Don't hurt the little master." Leng Hua's voice rang out. At the same time, he helped him up, worried that if he didn't hold her firmly, she would hurt the little master. Who would have thought that when he looked into his arms, little Yuer's eyes were curved into crescents, and she was smiling very happily. The monk at the side looked at the child in Hui Lang's arms and softly said, "Amit Ba, great monk, we meet again." Hui Lang said as he turned around with the child in his arms. "Benefactors and I are fated to meet again," Monk Yijie said as he stood quietly with his eyes lowered. "Great monk, this way please." Leng Hua gestured for him to take a seat. As they walked forward, they saw Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose coming from not far away. When Hui Lang saw them, he grinned and said, "Master and Madam are here." Monk Yijie's gaze swept past Fengjiu and landed on Xianyuan Mose, who was sitting in a wheelchair beside her. He was a little surprised to see him in a wheelchair. "Great monk, you don't have to be so restrained here," Fengjiu said with a smile. She carried the child to the front and introduced, "This is my husband, Xianyuan Mose. This is our son and daughter." "Amiba." The monk put his hands together and murmured, "Benefactor, you have both a son and a daughter. You're very blessed." Fengjiu smiled and saw Monk Yijie come to Xianyuan Mose and bowed. Yijie greets Benefactor. "Great monk, you don't have to be so polite. Please take a seat." Xianyuan Mose said and invited him to take a seat. "Thank you, Benefactor." As the monk spoke, he nodded slightly at the two people before he was led by Leng Hua to a seat on the side. Fengjiu nodded inwardly when he saw that they had arranged everything well. If a few tables were placed together, then Monk Yijie would definitely not be able to eat at the same table as them. After all, other than wine, there were also meat dishes on the table. Therefore, it was more suitable for them to sit on a small table with food placed on the floor. She glanced at Xianyuan Mose, who was beside her, and saw him lift his body up. His entire body floated up and then he sat cross-legged on the soft mat on the floor. Thus, she carried the child and sat down beside him. Seeing that Hui Lang was still hugging little Yu Feng Jiu smiled and said, Hui Lang, hugging little Yu won't fill your stomach. Put her on the bamboo chair at the side first. Come, let me do it. Qin Xin stepped forward to take little Yu and put her on the baby bamboo chair at the side. Then, she went to Feng Jiu's side and said, Master, give me the little masters. Feng Jiu responded and handed the child in his arms to her. He said, just push them to my side. Yes. Qin Xin responded and placed the two children on the baby bamboo chair. Then, she moved them to Feng Jiu's side. Master, this is for the two little masters. Bai Qing Chung brought the warm goat's milk over. All right, everyone sit down and eat. Otherwise, the food will get cold. Feng Jiu said and indicated for them to sit down. Then, she fed the two children the warm goat's milk. Chapter 39:29. Ba. That's right, the monk replied. Xinyuan Mose played with the wine cup in his hand and said, Buddhism emphasizes that the four elements are all vanity and the cycle of cause and effect. Since it was you who lost it, why did you think of asking us to find it for you? The monk looked up at Xinyuan Mose and said, There is a cause and effect. The reason why Buddhism sent me and Benefactor Feng was because she accepted the ancient golden lotus of Buddhism and promised the Holy Buddha. Among millions of people, only Benefactor Feng went to the myriad Buddhist sect. Naturally, she is fated to be with Buddhism. Xinyuan Mose looked up at him and said, You are a monk. If you travel with us, aren't you afraid of causing gossip? There are thousands of Tao in the world. I walk my own Tao and never care about what others say, he said with his hands together and lowered his eyes. Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose smiled and said, Well said. This is a toast to you. As he said this, he raised his cup and drank the wine in the cup. The monk picked up the tea in front of him and said, I will use tea in place of wine. As he said this, he also bowed. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. Feng Jiu finished feeding the two children the goat's milk and said with a smile, Master, try these vegetarian dishes. Master Ijia, these are the vegetarian dishes that we specially prepared for you. Hui Lang said with a grin. He picked up a piece of meat and said, If it weren't for the fact that you monks don't eat meat, I would like to invite you to try the taste of this meat. Ba. Benefactor, thank you for your kindness. I can eat vegetarian dishes. As he said this, he picked up his chopsticks and bowl and ate quietly. Everyone chatted, drank, and talked about happy things. Time passed quickly. When the banquet was over, everyone dispersed. Feng Jiu brought the two children and Xinyuan Mose back to the courtyard. They stayed here for another 2 days. Feng Jiu also helped Xinyuan Mose heal his legs with the power of the green lotus. However, the power of the green lotus did not return to its peak state. Moreover, it had been used a lot these 2 days, so the power of the green lotus seemed to have weakened. In the main courtyard, Feng Jiu sat with Xinyuan Mose. He looked at the two children in the courtyard and said, I estimate that it will take some time before you can stand up again. Qing Lian's strength is much weaker than before. It will take a few days before she can continue the treatment. It doesn't matter. It'll get better eventually. Just take it slow, Xinyuan Mose said, and then asked, We'll set off tomorrow. Is everything ready? And don't worry, it's all ready. They're all ready too. Feng Jiu smiled and said, I just sent Qin Xin and Fan Lin out to buy some dry food. We can eat it on the road. Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose said, There'll be plenty of food on the road. There'll be wild game everywhere. It's good to prepare some for the monks. Feng Jiu smiled and said, And it'll be more convenient to prepare some for the road. As soon as she finished speaking, she seemed to sense something and said, It seems like Mo Chun has come out of the ancient golden lotus. I'll ask him to come out. As she said this, she used her mind. A golden light flashed past. In the next moment, Mo Chun, dressed in white, appeared in front of the two. His figure was slightly illusory, as if it was transparent under the sunlight. However, it was real. Chapter 39:30. Mo Chun smiled warmly. I didn't expect it either. His gaze fell on the two children at the side. With a gentle smile, he asked, Are these your children? Yes, look at them. Feng went forward and picked up the children from the small bed. They are also your godson and godson. Looking at the two beautiful children, Chun couldn't help but reach out and hold their small hands. He praised, "They're so good-looking, just like you and your wife." Feng smiled proudly. "Of course, they will be more outstanding than us in the future." "Ha! You two are already rare monsters. If they are more outstanding than you, how heaven-defying would that be?" He chuckled, looked at the two children, and said, "However, these two children are indeed dragons and phoenixes among men. They will not be simple in the future." He turned to look at Xinyuan Mose. His gaze fell on his legs, and he said, "I heard from Agio that your legs couldn't stand up after that battle. Perhaps it was because they were corroded by the Black Lotus of Destruction for too long. Now that the ancient Golden Lotus is here, although she cannot use the power of the Golden Lotus to heal you, I can give it a try." Hearing this, Feng frowned slightly. "Your immortal body is not stable now. If you use the power of the Golden Lotus to heal him, won't you use up the immortal body that you worked so hard to condense? I know that it was not easy for you to condense an immortal body. Agio's power of the Green Lotus is gradually recovering. With her healing me, it will be fine if I recover slowly." As Xinyuan Mo spoke, he put one hand on his leg and said, "I have been in a wheelchair for a long time. I'm not in a hurry. No matter, I was just about to come out to see you. After this time, I will focus on cultivating until I condense an immortal body. Seeing you today, I don't know when we will meet again in the future." He spoke warmly, then smiled at Feng and said, "Moreover, your space is full of spiritual energy. It is a place that does not lose to the holy land of Buddhism. Cultivating there will be twice the result with half the effort." Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose and Feng looked at each other. Xinyuan Mose asked, "In your opinion, how long will it take to condense an immortal body? Is there anything else we can help you with?" Chan smiled warmly and said, "I originally thought it would take at least 10 years. However, if I concentrate on cultivating in the space, I might be able to condense an immortal body in a few years." As he spoke, he slowly shook his head. "Cultivating an immortal body can only be done by myself. Others can't help me. Then I'll have to trouble you with Moses' leg." As Feng spoke, she looked at Xinyuan Mose and said, "Let Chun treat it. If you combine it with the power of the Golden Lotus, your leg might recover faster." Xinyuan Mose looked at Chun and said, "Then I will have to trouble you." Chun smiled warmly and said, "We are so familiar with each other. There is no need to say this." He walked forward and stopped in front of Xinyuan Mose. He clenched his hands, and a golden ray of light flew out from his fingertips and landed on his knees. Xinyuan Mose felt a warm aura travel from his knees to his feet. This feeling was even stronger than Feng power of the Green Lotus. He could clearly feel a wave of power flowing through his legs. This power made his originally numb legs feel a wave of heat and numbness. Chapter 39-31. Feng watched as Chen's body gradually turned transparent and could not help but worry. Fortunately, he withdrew his hand after a while and smiled at the two of them. "I can only help you up to this point." Xinyuan Mose's feet moved slightly. He looked at him and said, "I can feel it now. I think I will be able to stand up very soon." As he spoke, he said solemnly, "Thank you." "That's good." Chan smiled warmly. He looked at the two children and said, "This is the first time I am meeting my adopted son and daughter, but I have nothing to give them." Feng smiled and said, "It's okay. You can give them something when you have cultivated an immortal body." "Okay," he replied and said, "When we meet again in the future, I will give them a gift." He looked at the two of them and said, "Take care of yourselves. We will meet again in the future." "Okay," the two of them replied. Chen's figure turned into a ray of golden light and returned to Feng space, attaching himself to the Golden Lotus. After Feng placed the two children back on the small bed, he went to Xinyuan Mose and asked, "How is your leg?" "I can move." He moved slightly and said, "But it's still a little difficult to control." Hearing this, Feng smiled happily. It's good that you can move. If you can move, then you can move more in the next few days. You will be able to stand up in the next few days. Seeing her happy expression, Xianyuan Mose also smiled. Although he did not want Mo Chen to treat him because he did not want to owe him too much, seeing her so happy, he was relieved. What he owed was still owed. Since he already owed him so much, he would slowly repay him if he had the chance in the future. The next morning, after everything was prepared, they sat in the carriage and leisurely headed out of the city. A few days later, when Feng Jiao and the others were walking on the mountain path, they faintly heard someone calling for help. Almost everyone's eyes turned to the monk walking by the side when they heard the cry for help. Umitba. The monk put his hands together and seemed to be a little embarrassed. He lowered his eyes and said, "Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda." As he spoke, his figure flashed in the direction of the call for help. Seeing this scene, everyone looked at each other helplessly and laughed at the same time. Du Fan shook his head and said with a smile, "It has only been a few days since we set off from the city, and this master has already saved people several times. He really has a merciful heart. This monk really likes to meddle in other people's business. Isn't he a monk? Why do you like to meddle in other people's business?" Hui Lang kicked a stone and played with a green foxtail in his hand. He looked at the meddlesome monk with a puzzled expression. He's a monk and naturally has compassion in his heart. He can't be considered meddling in other people's business. It's just that his cultivation is different from ours. Chi Kong said. Although he felt helpless, he could understand. After all, Reverend Yi Jia was a Buddhist. When faced with such a situation, he would naturally not stand by and do nothing. However, even he had to admit that he was meddling a little too much. Chapter 39-32. Feng Jiao held the curtain and looked outside. He smiled and said, "What's wrong with that? Since he wants to save people, let him do it. He's only been saving people along the way and hasn't asked us to help him. At most, we'll just slow down the journey." She smiled and said, "Since he's not in a hurry, there's no need for us to be in a hurry." Her words seemed to be right. Everyone thought to themselves and waited here. Sure enough, not long after, they saw the monk come back. However, unlike before, he was followed by a woman. Look, the monk came back with a woman. Hui Lang winked and said with a teasing look on his face. In the past, he didn't bring back the people he saved. Why did he bring back a woman this time? Du Fan also raised his eyebrows and looked surprised. Chi Kong glanced and said, "He's probably worried. This is the wilderness, and that woman seems to be heavily injured." Feng Jiu looked at the monk and the woman. The former walked slowly with his eyebrows lowered. The latter's face was pale, and there were bloodstains and wounds on her body. Moreover, she was walking with a limp. It seemed that she had hurt her foot. "Qin Xin, go and bandage that woman's wounds. We'll rest here for a while." Feng Jiu gestured for Qin Xin to help. He also got out of the carriage and wanted to walk with the child. "Yes." Qin Xin responded and walked toward Reverend Yi Jia and the woman. "Reverend, my master asked me to come over and help this woman treat her wound." Qin Xin said and looked at the woman behind him. "Umitba. Thank you, benefactor." The monk put his palms together and retreated to the side. The pale-faced woman looked at the people in front of her and couldn't help but feel a little timid. She looked at the carriage again, but she couldn't see the people in the carriage. She only saw the handsome men and beautiful women around the carriage. "Miss, sit here," Qin Xin said, and gestured for her to sit down. At the same time, she took out some medicine from her space. "Thank you for your trouble, Mississippi." The woman bowed before sitting down at the side. She then looked at the people resting around the carriage. Even though she had seen many outstanding people, she had rarely seen people with such outstanding temperaments like these people. They were the young masters of aristocratic families? Or was he a disciple of the family? Or a new talent of the sect? Why were all of them so graceful and imposing? Withdrawing her gaze, the woman looked at Qin Xin. Seeing that Qin Xin was concentrating on cleaning her wound without even asking her a single question, she felt even more uncertain. Who were these people? How could she be with a monk? She's only sprained her ankle, but her other wounds aren't too serious either. With proper rest, she'll recover in less than 2 days, Qin said as she packed up her things. She took a glance at the woman before returning to the carriage. At that moment, in the carriage, Monk was talking to Fengjiu. "Oh, so you want to take her with you?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and looked at Master Ijia. "No, I just want to put her down when we reach a place with other people." Monk lowered his eyes and said. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Reverend, she is not an ordinary person. She is a cultivator. Even if she is injured, I think she can still walk on her own." Chapter 39-33. Umitba. When we reach the village or the city, I will let her leave on her own, the monk said and bowed to Fengjiu. Then, he walked towards the girl. Fengjiu carried the 2 children and walked around. When she was about to return to the carriage to continue their journey, she suddenly heard messy footsteps coming towards them. She looked in that direction and was a little surprised. There were very few people in this place. How could there be messy footsteps? Moreover, that direction seemed to be the direction where the monk and the girl came from. Umitba. The monk sighed softly. Looking at the 20 or so people coming from that direction, he said regretfully, "I let them live, but I didn't expect them to bring people here." "Master, do you kill?" Luo Yu looked at the monk with a smile, as if he was watching a good show. "I don't kill," the monk said and added, "but if it's someone who is wicked beyond redemption, I will get rid of him." "It seems that you're not a stubborn person," Hui Lang said, and was a little surprised. Perhaps it was because they had been traveling together for a few days, and he often saw him meddling in other people's business. Hui Lang's words became more casual. "Monk, hand them over to us." "Hey, look, these girls are even prettier than the previous one," the leader of the group said, and looked straight at Qin Xian and Bai Qinshan. Seeing those people looking at them, the 2 girls only glanced at them coldly and retreated to the side of the carriage. "Big brother, these people don't look like ordinary people. Could he be the son of some aristocratic family? You see, all of them look so outstanding. Don't provoke someone you shouldn't provoke," a tall and thin man at the back said, looking at the group of people with some fear. "Ha ha!" 2 children's giggles came from the carriage. The 2 ignorant children were playing with Fengjiu in the carriage and laughed happily. "Listen, they're children's laughter. It seems that they're just a parade of some rich family." As the leader spoke, his eyes were still fixed on Qin Xian and Bai Qinshan. There were only 2 beautiful women in his eyes. "Quick, catch them for me," the man said and added, "Be careful, don't hurt the 2 beauties." Du Fan and the others leisurely glanced at those people. They really couldn't put these rogue cultivators in their eyes. To them, that little bit of strength was really not enough. "Master, what do you think we should do with these people?" Du Fan asked as he gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. He looked at the monk with a smile. "Umitba, let this poor monk handle it." As he spoke, he took off a string of Buddhist prayer bead from his neck and threw them at those people. When the Buddhist prayer beads were thrown, he clasped his hands together and chanted. "Look, the monk's Buddhist prayer beads are actually a magic weapon." Hui Lang looked at the string of Buddhist prayer beads that had become bigger in surprise. He saw that the Buddhist prayer beads had trapped more than 20 rogue cultivators in it. A Buddhist light was released from the Buddhist prayer beads, which shocked them and made them unable to escape. Those people held their heads and rolled on the ground. Vaguely, they heard a complicated and incomprehensible Buddhist chant coming from the monk's mouth. Accompanied by the Buddhist light, it enveloped those people. Chapter 39-34. Fengjiu, who had just boarded the carriage, took a look and saw that those people were hugging their heads and howling in pain. As the initial howls gradually subsided, their expressions gradually calmed down. However, something still didn't seem right. Upon closer inspection, the spiritual aura on their bodies had completely dissipated. Moreover, their eyes were lifeless, as if they had suffered a heavy blow. She raised her eyebrows, and her clear eyes fell on the monk. She didn't expect that he would cripple their cultivation as soon as he made a move. Moreover, from the looks of these people's situation, he had used the light of Buddha to attack their divine senses. Their divine senses had been severely injured, and they were now like idiots. She retracted her gaze and lowered the curtain of the carriage. She said to Xinyuan Mose, It seems that Master Ejie isn't an inflexible and inflexible person, crippling those people's cultivation and injuring their divine senses like idiots. What was the difference between this and killing them? No, it should be said that it was more terrifying than death, right? If he did it, at least they'd still be alive. If Hui Lang and the others did it, even living would be an extravagant hope, Xin Yuan Mose said as he picked up his son, who had crawled to his leg, and held him in his arms. Hearing his words, Fengjiu smiled and glanced outside again. She saw that the monk had already put away the string of Buddha beads. He chanted a sentence in the Buddhist language and then stood quietly to the side. Seeing this, she said to Lung Hua outside, "Let's go after we've dealt with them. See if we can find a village or town to rest before it gets dark." "Yes," Lung Hua replied and said to everyone, then continued driving the carriage forward. However, along the way, they didn't expect to see any villages or towns. On the other side, the sky gradually darkened as if it was going to rain. "Master, it looks like it's going to rain. There doesn't seem to be any shelter around here," Lung Hua said and looked up at the sky. Xin Yuan Mose lifted the curtain and looked at the sky. His brows furrowed, and he said, "This rain should be extremely heavy, and it should be accompanied by thunder. Let's speed up and see if there's any shelter up ahead." "Yes," Lung Hua replied. Then he saw the monk walking behind him come forward. "Benefactor, there will be a fork in the road ahead. Take the road on the right and walk for a while before you reach a ruined temple. We could take shelter there from the rain." Upon hearing this, Lung Hua glanced at the monk and asked, "Master, have you been there before?" "I've been here before, so I'm quite familiar with this area." He put his palms together and said, "Lung Hua, listen to the master. Turn right when you reach the fork." Fengjiu's voice came from the carriage. "Yes," Lung Hua replied and sped up the carriage. Du Fan and the others who were following him on his left and right stood with their hands behind their backs. Their figures swept against the wind, and their speed also increased rapidly. The woman following behind them was already injured. In addition, her strength was not as strong as theirs. At this moment, when she saw them speed up, her speed fell behind. She could not help but feel anxious. "Benefactor, it doesn't matter if you're slower. You're injured. Even if you're not injured, you can't keep up with their speed." The monk walked unhurriedly beside the woman and said, he was not anxious to be left behind when the group in front of them sped up. Instead, he walked at a steady pace. When the woman heard this, she glanced at the monk. She hesitated and asked, "Master, who are they?" Chapter 39-35. Feeling uncomfortable under his gaze, the woman said, "I overstepped my boundaries." The monk shifted his gaze and looked ahead, saying, "They didn't ask who you are. Benefactor, it's best that you don't ask who they are. If your injuries are better, you can leave on your own without waiting for a village or town." Hearing the monk's words, the woman's heart trembled. She didn't know what to think, but she didn't dare to look at him. She only responded in a low voice and walked beside him. The wind whistled and blew from the surroundings, bringing with it a trace of coldness. The sky was covered with dark clouds. Before they reached the temple, it had already started to rain. The wind and rain brought along with it, causing the temperature to plummet. Du Fan and the others used their spiritual energy to protect their bodies, so they weren't drenched by the rain. However, as the wind and rain blew, the curtain of the carriage was slightly lifted, and the faint sound of children crying could be heard from inside. They were a little anxious. "Didn't they say there was a temple in front? Why haven't we seen it yet?" Luo Yu said as he rushed forward, intending to scout ahead. In the carriage, Xin Yuan Mose and Fengjiu wrapped the two children in blankets and carried them in their arms to prevent them from catching a cold. The carriage moved quickly and wasn't very stable. Sitting inside, they swayed slightly. However, not long after, Luo Yu's voice came from the front. "It's here. The temple is here." Lung Hua drove the carriage forward, and the others followed. Not long after, when they arrived in front of the temple, they were slightly stunned. "This is a rundown temple? This is the temple that the monk was talking about?" Hui Lang went forward to take a look. Seeing that there were no leaks, he said, "Fortunately, there are no leaks." Just make do with it, and it won't shelter you from the rain. Since they were outside, this was the best they could do. Although it was a little run down, it could at least shelter them from the wind and rain. He didn't have much to nitpick about. Fengjiu carried the two children out of the carriage and walked towards the run-down temple. Xinyuan Mo's followed behind. Although he had regained some feeling in his legs, he still needed time to recover if he wanted to stand up and walk on his own. Therefore, he spent most of his time outside in a wheelchair. The group of people entered the dilapidated temple. The carriage was also pulled to a place under the eaves where it could shelter them from the rain. Once inside, the cold wind whistled. They laid a clean mat in a place where the wind could not reach. Only then did they let Xinyuan Mo's and Fengjiu sit down to rest. There are a few broken door bolts over there. Let's set them up to block the wind and rain, to prevent the wind and rain from blowing in. As Qi Kong spoke, he swept the doorboard clean and used it to block the wind and rain. There are branches in the corner. As Du Fan spoke, he picked up the branch and brought it to the front where Fengjiu and the others were sitting. He lit a fire to warm them up. Grandmaster, Yi Jie hasn't arrived yet. Leave the door open for him to enter. Fengjiu instructed. He carried the two children and dressed them in many layers of clothes. Then, he wrapped them in blankets and carried them in his arms. Xinyuan Mo's took out a cloak from his space and draped it over Fengjiu. He said, "Put this on. Don't catch a cold." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I won't. After all, the spiritual energy in my body can drive away the cold." As she spoke, she looked at the others and said, "Everyone sit down and rest. We can only make do here for the night." Chapter 39-36. Upon hearing this, Lung Hua smiled gently and said, "I don't have any branches, but I do have a lot of firewood in my space." Du Fan was startled and asked, "Firewood? What did you start storing firewood in your space?" "We haven't lived in this house for long, but everything inside is complete. When I tidied up the house, I brought everything that might be useful," Lung Hua said gently. After all, he was born poor, so there were many things that he wouldn't waste. In particular, he had several space rings that could store a lot of things. Therefore, when they were about to leave, he would take most of the things with him in case they would be useful in the future. "Ha ha ha, Lung Hua, we can rest assured when you do things." Luo Yu patted him on the shoulder and said, "Then light another bonfire here. At least it'll be warmer." Thus, Lung Hua reached out and took out the firewood from his space and piled it to the side. "I'll cook some porridge for the young masters," Qin Xin said with a smile as she prepared to cook the porridge. As they spoke, they heard footsteps coming from outside. Not long after, they saw the monk and the woman walk in. They looked over and saw that there wasn't a single drop of water on the monk's body, but the woman's clothes and hair were wet. "Master, come over here and warm yourself by the fire," Fengjiu said with a smile and invited him to sit by the fire. "Thank you, almsgiver," the monk said as he walked forward. The woman hesitated for a moment. Just as she was about to follow him, Lung Shuang stopped her. "Go over there," Lung Hua said and gestured to a corner. Frightened by his indifference and imposing manner, the woman didn't dare to say anything. She just responded and walked to the corner. "Master, have some dry food." Lung Hua took out the dry food and took out a barbecue rack from his space to heat it up over the fire. "Thank you, almsgiver," Monk Ijia said as he took the rations and tore off a small piece to eat. Hui Lang saw him eating by himself and ignoring the woman in the corner, so he purposely asked with a grin, "Monk, you're a monk after all. Why are you eating all the food you have and not giving some to the woman you saved?" Fengjiu looked at him disapprovingly. He felt that Hui Lang had gone overboard. Noticing Fengjiu's gaze, Hui Lang rubbed his nose and smiled awkwardly. "Madam, I'm just curious." He didn't have any ill intentions. He just wanted to know why the monk could eat the food without asking the woman if she wanted to eat. Monk Ijia swallowed a piece of dry rations before saying, "This penniless monk can't even save myself, so how can I save others?" Hui Lang was perplexed by the genteel words. He looked at Du Fan and asked in a low voice, "What does he mean? What do you mean by not being able to save yourself? What redeeming people? What does he mean?" Du Fan smiled and opened the fan in his hand. "What he means is that his rations are also given to him by others. Therefore, if he can't even save himself, he naturally can't help others. Lung Hua smiled and took some dry rations to the corner and handed them to the woman. "Miss, have some." "Thank you, young master." She quickly stood up and thanked him as she took the dry rations. After Lung Hua turned and walked away, she took the dry rations and sat down. She ate them in small bites while looking at these strange people. Chapter 39-37. Everyone sat around the bonfire and chatted idly. They even warmed up some wine to warm their bodies. However, as the sky outside grew darker, there seemed to be the sound of horse hooves approaching. Almost as soon as they heard the sound of horse hooves coming from outside, Du Fan and the others who were sitting by the bonfire stood up. "I'll go and see who it is." As Du Fan spoke, he stepped outside. Unexpectedly, before he could reach the door that was blocking the way, the door was kicked open by a strong force. Bang! The sound of a heavy impact and the cracking of wooden planks was heard. Even though it was a rainy night, it was extremely loud and clear. As a result, it frightened the two children who were nestled in Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mo's arms, who were about to fall asleep. Wah! Wah wah! The two children were startled by the sudden sound of the door being kicked open. Their small bodies trembled and they burst into tears. Seeing that the two children were frightened, Xianyuan Mo's aura immediately turned cold. That strong and intimidating aura, mixed with a murderous aura, filled the air. Monkey Jie, who was sitting next to them, couldn't help but lower his eyes and murmur softly, "Amit Ba." Fengjiu's brows furrowed slightly. Her clear eyes were filled with a cold light as she looked at the temple's door. She comforted the two children. "Be good, don't cry. Mother is here." She gently coaxed them and gently patted the child's back with one hand. Perhaps it was because he heard Fengjiu's gentle voice and felt her familiar aura. Little Mu Chun in her arms pursed his little mouth and sobbed softly. However, he stopped crying and only blinked his clear and watery eyes innocently at her. "It's all right. Father and Mother are here. Father and Mother are here to accompany you. It's all right." Fengjiu gently coaxed. Seeing that her son had stopped crying, the girl was still crying at the top of her lungs. "Come, let me carry him." As Fengjiu spoke, she passed her son, who had stopped crying, to Xianyuan Mo's. She then took her daughter, who was crying nonstop. Xianyuan Mo's was worried that his aura would scare the child, so when he heard Fengjiu's voice, he restrained his anger and hugged his son, who was blinking at him, and ordered in a deep voice, "Don't let any of them in." His deep voice was filled with a powerful aura. Even though it was just a sentence, it was enough to make people feel an intimidating pressure. Hui Lang and the others were already angry when they saw the people outside kick open the door and scare the two children. Now that they heard their master's words, they immediately stood up. He really needs to be taught a lesson. As Hui Lang spoke, he prepared to attack the person who kicked the door open. Who would have thought that Du Fan, who had stepped forward first, had already sent out a stream of air with the fan in his hand when the person kicked the wooden door open and stepped in. Whoosh! Bang! With a whoosh, the stream of air from the fan attacked the person who was stepping in at a speed that was too fast for one to cover one's ears. With a muffled groan, the person's figure flew backward until he fell into the wind outside. Pooh! The person who fell to the ground clutched his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. He tried to stand up, but who knew that he would fall back down halfway? Chapter 39-38. Useless people. Kill them. The voice that came from the carriage was low and vicious. The moment the voice echoed, the face of the cultivator on the ground turned pale. Before he could beg for mercy, the cultivator in front of him moved. A ray of cold light flashed by and cut off the cultivator's head with one slash. This scene was witnessed by Du Fan, Hui Lang, and the others who were standing at the entrance of the temple. They saw that person's head and body scattered on the ground in the wind and rain. His blood flowed into the soil along with the rain. When they saw that those people were all expressionless, they instinctively became vigilant and carefully sized up those people outside. They saw that there were about 30 people in the group outside. There were about 10 people in front of each group. These people were all riding horses and wearing special armor. They were protecting the luxurious carriage in the middle. They couldn't see who was inside the carriage, but they could tell that the cultivators riding the horses were all rare experts. The most important thing was the baleful aura on their bodies. That's right, it was baleful aura. It was the kind of baleful aura that only people whose hands were stained with blood would have. These people had it. If there was a difference between these people and their baleful aura, it could only be said that their baleful aura was restrained, while these people's baleful aura was released. The rain fell from their bodies. They didn't use spiritual energy to protect their bodies. Instead, they allowed the rain to fall on their bodies and drench them. At first glance, the horses they rode looked like ordinary horses. However, upon closer inspection, it wasn't difficult to see that they were single-horned spirit beasts. Who were these people who suddenly appeared in the rainy night? What kind of person would he be if he would open his mouth and kill the people under him? Before seeing the other party, just by looking at these cultivators riding on spirit beasts and horses, they could conclude that no matter who the other party was, they were not good people. Furthermore, they could be classified as a dangerous person. Give up the temple, and I can consider leaving your corpses intact. An arrogant and sinister voice came from the luxurious carriage. When Lung Hua and the others heard this, they sneered. Leave our corpses intact. How arrogant! I like to see if I really have that ability, Hui Lang said. In the next moment, his figure swept out and attacked the cultivator in front of him. His attack was extremely fast, and it was a killing move. However, what he did not expect was that the move that he thought would be able to kill his opponent with one strike only scratched his shoulder. Seeing the cultivator quickly retreat, Hui Lang stared at him, then looked at the sword in his hand and said, "The armor you're wearing is quite thick. That sword didn't make you bleed." He held the long sword in his hand, and the spiritual energy in his body surged. A sharp sword aura accompanied his figure as it swept out. This attack avoided the place where the opponent was wearing armor and instead focused on other weak spots. As the two of them fought, neither Du Fan's group nor the cultivators riding in the rain made a move to help. It was as if the fight had nothing to do with them. Swish! Ah! A swift and fierce stream of air gushed out, and an arm was chopped off and sent flying. Blood spurted out, and the sword slashed out once more. A miserable shriek rang out as the battle between the two of them came to an end. Chapter 39:39. The horsemen narrowed their eyes when they saw this scene. They did not expect the people in this run-down temple to be so strong. The person sitting in the luxurious carriage was silent for a while. Then a cold word came out from his mouth. Kill! After the horsemen were killed by Hui Lang, the other party did not retreat, but instead stared at them. Du Fan and the others were already on guard. Therefore, when they heard the cold and murderous voice, they quickly spread out and guarded the four corners of the run-down temple, not letting the battle outside affect their master. Dozens of sword shadows attacked from outside. The people in the run-down temple could clearly feel the strong, murderous aura. Hearing the sounds of battle outside, the woman who was curled up in the corner carefully looked outside. When she saw the guards outside, her pupils constricted and she shrank further into the corner. Her face, which was already pale, became even paler after seeing those people. Do you know who they are? Feng Jiu's voice slowly came out, looking at the woman in the corner. Hearing this voice, the woman looked at Feng Jiu and said in a trembling voice, They're the black guards of the Demon King. They have killed countless people and are very strong. It is said that those who have seen them are all dead. Feng Jiu raised his eyebrows and looked at the monk who was chanting with his hands clasped together. He asked, Master, have you heard of them? Amipa. Everyone in this area knows of the Azura King's great name. It's just that this poor monk has never met you before, he said slowly and looked outside. The windshield door had been kicked down. Sitting in his position, he could see the battle outside and the luxurious black carriage in the wind and rain. However, in addition to these, he also saw a strong and cold aura around the carriage, as well as countless grievances and the smell of blood. He sighed softly and murmured Buddhist words. Then, he lowered his eyes and silently chanted Buddhist scriptures. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, she could not send the 2 children into the space. Therefore, she handed the children to Xinyuan Mose and said, "Take care of the children. I will go take a look." "Yes." Xinyuan Mose responded and placed the 2 children beside him. He used his own aura to protect them so that they would not be affected by the murderous aura and powerful pressure outside. Fengjiu walked to the entrance of the temple and watched. The 8 captains of the Phoenix Guard, Du Fan, Hui Lang, and the others had all joined the battle. Lung Hua, Bai Qing Cheng, and Lung Shuang, Qin Xian, and the others were guarding the entrance of the temple. In the dark, Ying Yi was keeping watch. The saber lights and sword shadows flashed in the wind and rain. A horrifying, murderous aura tore through the rain. The smell of blood, together with the aura of death, permeated the air and was washed away by the rain. The luxurious black carriage was still parked there, neither advancing nor retreating. The surrounding sword chi was unable to harm him at all. Was the Azura king the one sitting inside? She observed these cavalry guards. They were not as strong as Qi Kong and the others, but they were well trained. Perhaps they knew that they were no match for Qi Kong and the others in a one-on-one battle, so they set up a killing formation. They attacked together and retreated together. Their cooperation was flawless. Qi Kong and the others could not do anything to them. Chapter 39-40. In the black carriage, through the front partition, the man sitting in the carriage narrowed his eyes and stared at the red figure standing in front of the temple gate. His sharp and powerful gaze unscrupulously sized her up. Outstanding temperament, a beautiful face, an exquisite figure, and a breathtaking aura. It was very dazzling. He stared at her, and it was unknown what he was thinking. Fengjiu's gaze moved away from the people fighting and coldly looked at the carriage, as if she was looking at the people inside through the carriage. That gaze didn't move away. Although she didn't see it, she knew that the other party was staring at her. That gaze was aggressive and unscrupulous. Her palm moved, and a silver needle was clamped between her fingertips. She looked at the people fighting, and her gaze swept over one of the people in the attack formation. She moved the spiritual power in her hand, and a cold light instantly attacked. There was a slight sound of air being covered by the wind and rain, and a cold light flashed. Just as the silver needle was about to shoot into one of the people's body, a clang was heard. She watched as the light streaked across the rainy night and hit the silver needle, knocking it to the ground. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and looked at the silver needle being knocked to the ground, and the corners of her lips curled up in surprise. In the next moment, she moved her hand again and several silver needles shot out. As expected, the person in the carriage attacked again. Just as the several streams of air were released, she flipped her palm, and a palm wind shot out with the force of thunder towards the carriage. A powerful aura accompanied by wind blades swept out, and the wind and rain in the air were blown to the side and rolled toward the carriage. The one-horned spirit horse in front of the carriage was panicked by the attack of the air and retracted its front hooves, raising its head and neighing. The carriage shook because of the spirit horse's panic. The 2 guards riding the carriage quickly tightened the reins. At this time, a stream of air came out of the carriage and pushed the spirit horses back, making them stay on the ground. At the same time, it also stabilized the shaking carriage. Fengjiu's eyes flashed when she saw the carriage being pushed back. Her hand flashed, and a sword chi shot out at the 2 spirit horses, pulling the carriage at a speed that was too fast for one to cover their ears. When the other party saw Fengjiu making a move, he also made a move to block it. Surprisingly, he was also able to neutralize Fengjiu's attack. The 2 of them, one standing under the eaves and the other sitting in the carriage, exchanged blows. Whoosh! Boom! The sharp sound of air currents streaked across the rainy night. The 2 air currents fiercely collided with each other, producing a loud rumbling sound. The powerful air currents rippled out like water ripples. The 2 chi blended together and attacked the 2 groups of people who were fighting. And, pooh! The air hit Qi Kong and the other guards, and the 2 people fighting were instantly scattered. Qi Kong and the others were stronger, and they quickly stabilized their bodies and retreated. However, The other party's strength was not as strong as Qi Kong and the others. After being hit, some of them spat out blood, some groaned, and some fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, Feng Jiu put one hand behind her back and raised the other hand, indicating Qi Kong and the others to retreat to the side. The other party also retreated at this moment and stood guard beside the black carriage, waiting for orders from the carriage. Chapter 39:41. Feng Jiu's lips curled into a cold smile when she saw the figure charging towards her. Her opponent was at the level of a high god, while she had yet to fully recover her powers. It could be said that there was still some distance between them if they really fought. Earlier on, the two of them seemed to be evenly matched. If they were to fight again, she might be the one at a disadvantage. Furthermore, she did not want to fight with her opponent directly. Hence, when she saw that the figure was attacking her directly, she moved her lips and spoke in a clear and cold voice. Fire Phoenix. As soon as she spoke, a flame shot out with a swoosh. It was so fast that the surrounding cavalry could not see what it was. Only the black figure who had rushed out saw the flame and narrowed his eyes. He seemed to want to avoid it. However, the flame spread its wings, screeched, and swooped down to attack him. Whoosh! Swoosh! Bang! The man used all his strength to resist. His powerful aura collided with the air current of the Fire Phoenix. The two forces fought against each other, and the air current surged in both directions. The man was pushed back by the air current of the Fire Phoenix until his body could no longer withstand the powerful ancient aura and the terrifying air current. He was finally sent flying with a bang. Puffed! The man spat out a mouthful of blood. The robe in front of his chest had been burned by the Fire Phoenix's flames. A faint burnt smell filled the air. The man screamed, as if he was in great pain. His body flipped in midair and quickly steadied himself before landing on the ground. However, after landing on the ground, he swayed as if he was about to fall over at any time. The Fire Phoenix did not give him any time to catch his breath. It spread its powerful wings and flew up again with flames. The moment it released its ancient aura, the cavalry turned pale and bent over. Even the spiritual horses neighed and knelt on the ground, not daring to move. Go! The Azura King snorted coldly and threw out an object. The next moment, the cavalry that had been rendered immobile by the pressure instantly turned into rays of light and flew into the scroll thrown out by the Azura King. As the Azura King's robe fluttered, he was quickly teleported away and disappeared into thin air. The Fire Phoenix's attack missed. It flapped its wings, and with a flash of light, it transformed into a small bird and landed on Feng Jiu's shoulder. Master, they escaped. Feng Jiu looked at the rainy night and said, "That man's powerful and has a life-saving treasure on him. It won't be easy to kill him." As she spoke, she turned to look at the Fire Phoenix and smiled. "Your power has increased." Outside, Feng Jiu and the Fire Phoenix were talking. Qi Kong and the rest had already walked to the side. In the corner, the woman who had curled up into a ball looked outside in shock. She looked at the Fire Phoenix and Feng Jiu, unable to regain her senses for a long time. Feng Jiu looked at Qi Kong and the rest. Seeing that they were not injured, he said, "Let's go in." As he spoke, he turned and walked inside. Du Fan smiled and looked at the spiritual horses and the black horse carriage that were still kneeling in the rainy night. He said, "Those people escaped in a hurry and abandoned these single-horned spiritual horses. It's a waste to leave them here. Ha ha! They rushed into the city and sold them. They could still make a lot of money." As Luo Yu spoke, he walked into the rain. Chapter 39:42. Seeing Feng Jiu enter, Xin Yuan Mose extended his hand. Feng Jiu smiled and reached out to take his hand and sat down beside him. The monk saw this and softly murmured, "Amit Ba." Then he lowered his eyes and silently recited the Heart Sutra. "How is it?" Xin Yuan Mose asked. Although it was a sentence that came out of nowhere, Feng Jiu knew what he meant. She said, "He's very strong, and his cultivation method is very strange. I reckon that even if Qi Kong and the others fought with him, it would be very difficult for them to defeat him." She paused for a moment before continuing, It's just that I let him escape this time. I reckon that we'll have another feud." Her original intention was to let the Fire Phoenix come out and give him a fatal blow to prevent future troubles. Who knew that in the end, he would still escape. "It's okay. Just be careful in the future," he said slowly. That night, the rain continued to fall. Some distance away, the Azura King and his men were in a sorry state as they were drenched in the rain. The cavalry used their cloaks to shield the Demon King from the rain. However, the rain was too heavy. The rainwater seeped through the cloaks and dripped onto his head and the mask on his face. She couldn't see his face, but she could see his red hair, which was different from ordinary people's, and his cold eyes, which were suffused with a bloody light. His chest was burnt, but at this moment, under the rain, the smell of burnt flesh had already dissipated. Only a piece of burnt flesh was left, and it was a ghastly sight. "Master, apply some medicine on your wound." One of the cavalry mustered up his courage and said, but who knew that as soon as he spoke, he was sent flying by a gust of wind and landed heavily on the mountain path. The Demon King's gaze was gloomy as he looked at the cavalry who had been sent flying and was kneeling on the ground. His gloomy voice was filled with hostility. "This wound is my humiliation. I want to keep it as a constant reminder." Hearing this, the cavalry did not dare to say anything about applying medicine. However, one of them hesitated and said, "Master, who are those people? How can they be so strong? And that firebird, isn't that the ancient divine beast Fire Phoenix?" When the Demon King heard this, his gloomy eyes flashed with a cold light. He said, "Possessing the ancient divine beast Fire Phoenix, that person should be the ghost Dr. Fungio." "Ghost Dr. Fungio?" The cavalry looked at each other. They had never heard of this person. However, hearing their master's words, it seemed that this ghost, Dr. Fungio, was very powerful and famous. The Demon King did not say anything more to them, and only narrowed his eyes as he stared in the direction of the ruined temple. Ghost Dr. Fungio. Who would have thought that the woman who was a legend in many places would actually appear here? When he thought about how there was no monarch in this area, and how she had appeared here, the aura on his body became even colder. He had long since regarded this area as his, and if anyone dared to have any ideas about it, then he would definitely not let that person off. As for the ghost Dr. Fungio, that woman, not only did she possess great power and stunning beauty, she was also a legend in many places. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a dazzling bolt of lightning suddenly streaked across the sky. Then, with a loud bang, a bolt of heavenly lightning struck down from the sky with a cracking sound. It struck the tree that the Azura King was sitting on at a speed that was too fast for one to cover their ears. Bang! Chapter 39:43. Kacha. The large tree was split into two halves with a kacha, and the flames started to burn. Those people finally regained their senses and quickly dodged. However, their bodies were already charred by the lightning, and they were in a sorry state. They all stood by the mountain path and looked at the flames that were burning in the rain and were extinguished by the rain. They were all stunned. With their cultivation and strength, they were actually struck by lightning on this rainy day. They carefully looked at their master. When they saw the aura on his body, they felt as if their hearts were being squeezed tightly by a hand, making it difficult for them to breathe. In particular, when they saw that the ends of his scarlet red hair were stained with sparks of fire, and there was a trace of a burnt smell, it made them feel even more terrified. They did not have the guts to step forward and extinguish the fire for their master. However, when they saw the small flame burning his hair, they were extremely terrified. Fortunately, not long after, they saw him raise his hand and extinguish the small flame at the tip of his hair. Only then did they secretly heave a sigh of relief. The rain continued to fall, and there was nowhere to shelter them from the rain. The guards could only endure the fear in their hearts and step forward to block the rain for their master. At this moment, the Demon King's body was filled with a murderous aura. That ruthless aura made the people around him not dare to breathe loudly. They could only hope that the rain would stop as soon as possible. However, the rain continued to fall until the next morning before gradually stopping. Fungio and the rest who were in the run-down temple walked out when they saw that the rain had stopped. The sky after the rain was exceptionally blue and the air was very fresh. Fengjiu looked at the spirit horses that were tied together outside and could not help but smile. "Master, are we going to continue our journey?" Du Fan asked. He was already sitting in the black horse carriage and was prepared to bring the carriage along to sell it. After all, these were their spoils of war. "Come on, let's go. Ride the spirit horses and sit in the carriage. It's faster to walk." Fengjiu smiled and let them choose their own. He turned around and said to the monk, "Master, you can sit in the carriage." The monk glanced at the black horse carriage and softly muttered, "Umitba, this poor monk can walk." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Fengjiu. "Master, monks shouldn't stick to one pattern." Hearing this, the monk didn't say anything else. He glanced at Fengjiu and said, "Umitba, this poor monk will listen to benefactor's arrangements." With that, he walked towards the carriage. The resentment and baleful aura around the carriage dispersed after the Audiobook king left. Even so, in the eyes of the monk, the carriage was still stained with the smell of blood. Xin Yuan Mose got into the carriage, and by Qin Chung and Qin Xan carried their children up. They also chose a spirit beast horse to ride. When everyone was ready, the woman who was hiding in the corner walked out from behind. She glanced at them, as if she wanted to follow them, but didn't dare to. "Your injuries are almost healed. Leave on your own." Lung Hua glanced at her, paused for a moment, then pulled out a spirit horse. "This mount is for you." The woman looked at the mount and backed away with a pale face. No, I don't need this. I can walk on my own." Chapter 39:44. Seeing this, Lung Hua only smiled gently and tied up the spirit beast horse. The group continued forward. The woman watched them leave and hesitated for a moment before heading in another direction. A day later, they entered the city. As soon as they entered the city, they felt that some of the cultivators in the city were looking at them strangely. That kind of sizing up gaze was filled with scrutiny and surprise, as if there was something they didn't know. Why are the people in the city staring at us? Although we are very outstanding, there's no need to stare at us like this, right? Hui Lang rubbed his chin and pulled the spirit beast horse forward. Suddenly, he grinned proudly. They must have seen us leading so many spirit beasts, or perhaps they know that these spirit beast horses belong to the Audiobook king? Or has the news of the Audiobook king's defeat already spread? Du Fan patted his shoulder and said, "You're thinking too much." His voice paused, and he looked around before saying, "But we still have to be careful. I feel that their gazes are unfriendly." It was one thing in the past, but now that there were two more young masters, he had to be more careful in everything he did. "You two come with me and take these spirit beast horses to the auction house to auction." Du Fan said and glanced at Hui Lang and Lu Yun beside him. "All right, then tell Master and the others to go to the inn to rest first. We'll go back now." Lu Yun said and pulled the rope tied to Chi Kong and the others' hands over. "I'll go tell them." Du Fan walked forward and came to Fengjiu's carriage to tell them. At this time, the monk on the black horse carriage opened the curtain and walked down, saying to Du Fan, "Benefactor, this poor monk can just walk here." Saying this, he walked to Fengjiu's carriage and said, "This poor monk wants to visit an old friend in the city, so I won't be staying in the same inn as Benefactor. How long does Benefactor plan to stay here? When the time comes, this poor monk will come to meet you." Hearing this, Fengjiu, who was in the carriage, lifted the curtain and threw a jade tablet to him. He smiled and said, "Master, I'll inform you when the time comes." "All right." As the monk spoke, he put his palms together and bowed to her before leaving. "Go. Take that carriage with you. Don't leave it behind," Fengjiu said, lowering the curtain to let Lung Hua continue forward to find an inn to stay. After watching them leave, Du Fan said to Hui Lang and the other man, "Let's go. After auctioning off these things, we'll go around the city and buy some things back. Then let's buy some alcohol later. Let's see if there's any good spirit wine. I don't have much wine left in my space, so I'll buy some." As Hui Lang spoke, he pulled the rope and urged the spirit horses forward. He asked, "Where's this auction? We need to find someone to ask." "I just asked. It's still some distance from here. Come with me." Luyan said, and led them forward. 2 out of the 3 of them were driving 30 spear horses, while the other person was driving the carriage. As they walked on the street, it could be said that the people around them automatically made way for them. Each and every one of them was looking at them strangely. Seeing the 3 of them going to the auction house, a few rogue cultivators who were drinking tea on the side of the road looked at each other and asked, "Is it these people?" Chapter 39:45. When Du Fan and the others brought the spirit horses to the auction house, the middle-aged man at the reception looked at the spirit horses with cold sweat and gulped. "What? You're not going to accept them?" Du Fan raised his eyebrows and looked at him. He looked at the spirit horses and finally gritted his teeth and said, "Please wait for a moment. I'll get our head steward." With that, he quickly turned and walked inside. Inside, the middle-aged man found a man who was slightly older than him and said, "Head steward, there are a few people outside. They pulled some spirit horses and a black horse carriage and said that they want to sell it to us. What do you think?" Hearing this, the head steward who was talking to the 2 old men paused and asked, "Is it the rumor outside? It seems to be true, so we don't dare to accept it." The head steward lowered his voice and said. The 2 old men who were drinking tea at the side heard this and looked at each other. One of them smiled and said, "I'm curious. What is it that your auction house doesn't dare to accept?" "Yes, let's hear it," the other old man said. Hearing this, the head steward said, "There are a few people outside who want to sell something, but the thing they want to sell is a little tricky. It can be said that it's a hot potato." "What kind of hot potato? Why does it sound like it's a little tricky? Is there a rumor?" the old man asked. "You don't know?" This time, it was the head steward's turn to be surprised. He looked at them and said, "These days, the heavenly Tao has been saying that the Azura king met a few very powerful people in a run-down temple. Not only was he injured, but he also fled in a sorry state. He didn't even care about his mount. So when the people outside pulled the spirit horses into the city, the people in the city guessed that it was those people who spread the news." Hearing this, the 2 old men looked at each other in surprise. One of them asked, "Who is so powerful? What about those people outside?" "It seems like it's true, but..." Before he could finish, he saw the middle-aged man beside him pull him, as if to remind him that those people were still waiting outside. "I'll go take a look first. I'll come back in a bit." Just as he was about to leave, the 2 elders also stood up and said with a smile, "Let's also go take a look." Thus, the few of them walked out together. Just as Du Fan and the others were waiting impatiently, they saw a few people walk out from inside. Seeing those people staring at them and sizing them up, Grey Wolf stepped forward and asked, "How is it? Do you accept it or not? If you don't accept it, we'll have to find another one." The chief manager chuckled and said, "Sir, I reckon that no one else besides us would dare to accept these items." He smiled and said to the steward at the side, "Let the people below take those spirit beasts away and estimate the price of the items. I'll have a chat with these young masters and pay them the money later." Yes. Only then did the steward order his subordinates to bring the spirit beast horses and carriages to the side to check and appraise them. "Sirs, please come in and have some tea," the great manager said and gestured for them to enter. Seeing this, Du Fan nodded at Hui Lang and the others, then stepped inside. Not long after they sat down inside, Hui Lang asked, "What do you mean by what you said just now? What do you mean that no one else would dare to accept it? Do you know where our items came from?" Chapter 39:46. Seeing this, Du Fan smiled. It seemed that this auction house had a very strong backer as well. "Do you know what rumors have been spreading about you recently?" the head manager asked as his gaze fell upon them. Du Fan smiled. "It doesn't matter what rumors have been spreading, because we don't care." Hearing this confidence, the head manager's eyes flashed. "You're very confident. Since that's the case, I won't say much." When the 2 elders heard this, they could not help but glance at the head manager. They looked at each other, and one of them could not help but ask, "Did you really fight with the Azura king? It said that they threw away their armor and fled. Is that true? If it wasn't true, these things wouldn't be here." Hui Lang grinned and took a bite of the pastry on the table. "You dare to accept these things from us. It seems that you're quite brave." When they heard this, they only smiled and did not say anything. The Azura King was not the only force on this mainland. Since they dared to accept these things, they naturally had a certain backing. If you have other things in the future, you can also bring them to us, the head manager said to them. Just as he was about to say something else, a white-haired elder walked in from outside. When he saw the elder, a strange look flashed across the head manager's eyes. He quickly stood up and bowed. Elder Lin. Greetings, Elder Lin. The two elders at the side also hurriedly stood up and bowed. Compared to how casual they were before, they were now much more restrained because of the elder's appearance. The elder responded but did not look at them. Instead, his gaze fell upon Du Fan and the others. His gaze was scrutinizing and sizing them up, and there was also an obvious aura of a superior. As the elders sized them up, Du Fan and the others also looked at him. A trace of surprise flashed across their hearts, because the elder's aura was very unfathomable, giving them a very dangerous feeling. You may leave. He waved his hand, gesturing for the head manager and the other two to leave. Hearing this, the head manager and the other two looked at each other before replying, yes. Then, they respectfully left. Seeing this, Du Fan raised an eyebrow and said to the manager, tell the cashier to hurry up. We don't have much time to wait here. Are you the ghost doctor's underlings? The old man asked, looking at them. Without waiting for them to speak, he said, since the few of you are here, it seems that the ghost doctor is also here. Hearing this, Hui Lang rubbed his chin. Lu Yun's expression was normal. Du Fan brushed his robe and stood up. He said to Hui Lang and Lu Yun, let's go. He's going to collect the debt. Perhaps because he was ignored, the old man's face darkened. He clasped his hands behind his back and narrowed his eyes as he watched them leave. He did not follow them. However, after they had collected the debt and left the auction house, the old man with his hands behind his back also walked out. He restrained his aura and followed behind them. Du Fan and the others took the money from selling their items and walked into the wine shop. After buying some things and putting them into the space, the three of them turned into an alley. Chapter 39:47. Hee, I was wondering who had the guts to follow us. I didn't expect it to be you. He rubbed his fists and stretched his muscles, making cracking sounds as he approached step by step. Lu Yun stood on the wall of the alley and looked at the old man who was surrounded in the middle. His spiritual power surged, as if he was ready to make a move at any time. The fan in Du Fan's hand opened with a swoosh, and he fanned himself from time to time. With a cordial smile on his face, he looked at the old man and said, what do you want to do? The old man looked at Du Fan and felt that although he was smiling, it made his hair stand on end. Moreover, his aura seemed to have been released, which was different from when he was in the auction house. Could it be that this was their true strength and the momentum they should have? He couldn't help but take a step back and look at them warily. Since you followed us out, why don't you tell us how you know about the ghost doctor? Du Fan fanned himself lightly and walked forward step by step. The news that they had come here seemed to have quietly spread. These people guessed their identity as soon as they saw them. This really surprised him. Didn't this continent not know about the outside world? Where did he get the news about them from? The old man saw that the situation was not right. He turned his palm, and a teleportation scroll appeared in his hand. However, before he could open it, the man holding the fan in front of him and smiling amiably had already arrived in front of him. A fierce attack came, making him unable to care about anything else and could only defend himself. Hui Lang and Lu Yun stood in place and watched. When they saw the two people fighting, the aura in the alley spread. They looked at each other, and Hui Lang walked out of the alley, while Lu Yun continued to watch from the top of the alley wall. Because of their fight, the increase in their combat strength, the fluctuation of energy, and the aura of powerhouses spread out. Some nearby cultivators noticed and came over to see what was going on. Hui Lang leaned on the alley with his arms crossed. When he saw two cultivators coming over, he reached out and stopped them. They're settling personal matters inside. Don't join the fun. The two cultivators were stopped by him. Their eyes flashed as they looked at him and didn't speak loudly for a while. Not far behind, some cultivators were looking at the gray wolf while whispering to the people beside them. After a while, the 10 or so cultivators walked over. Before they even got close, They were already sneering at the gray wolf. "This alley doesn't belong to you. Why don't you let's get close?" As soon as his voice fell, he said to the two cultivators who were stopped, "This person is an outsider. He just entered the city this morning." What he meant was that this person was an outsider and had no background here. Even if they attacked him, there was nothing to worry about. "However, I saw you take a lot of things to auction house this morning." As the cultivators spoke, they stared at Hui Lang with ill intentions. "Bye." When the two cultivators heard this, greed appeared in their eyes. They were about to turn around and leave, but just as they turned around, several hidden weapons appeared in their hands. Chapter 39:48. The two of them only saw a black figure flash past in front of them. Then they felt as if their muscles and bones had been twisted. With a cracking sound, they screamed in pain, and the world in front of them spun. The dozen or so cultivators looked ahead with pale faces. They saw that the two cultivators were twisted into a circle and tied together. Their bodies were arched backward, and only their abdomens were stuck to the ground. Their hands and feet were twisted and tied together. There was no rope, but they were twisted and tied together. Hearing the screams of the two people, cold sweat broke out on their foreheads, and they could not help but step back. "Want to leave?" Hui Lang clapped his hands, twisted his shoulders, and walked toward the dozen or so people. "Didn't you want to see my treasure? Come on." He stretched out his finger and made a beckoning gesture at them. "A misunderstanding, misunderstanding." The cultivators hurriedly said, their voices trembling uncontrollably. He, it's good that you misunderstood." Hui Lang grinned. "It wasn't easy for me to move my hands and feet. How could I let you run away?" He stopped and looked at them with his arms crossed. "Do you want to come over yourself? Or do you want me to go over?" When a dozen or so people heard this, they were so scared that they immediately turned around and ran. However, who knew that a force sucked them from behind and threw them all to the corner of the wall. "Ah!" Hiss! One by one, they cried out in pain. Before they could stand up, the black figure rushed forward, lifted them up, twisted them, and threw them to the side. For a moment, only the screams could be heard, and the people who heard it could not help but feel a chill run up from the soles of their feet. In particular, this was not in the alley, but at the entrance of the alley. Many people on the street outside saw this scene, but no one dared to go forward. Hui Lang took everything from them, then snorted and kicked them. "Get lost. If there's a next time, I'll take your lives." Those people's hands and feet were tied together, and they were kicked to the corner of the road by him. They struggled for a long time, but could not break free. They could only cry for help and cry out in pain. While Hui Lang was dealing with these people, in the alley, the old man was already hung upside down by Lu Yun, hanging on the wall of the alley. Du Fan gently patted his chest with the fan in his hand, fanning himself. Looking at the pale old man with blood seeping from the corner of his mouth, he smiled. "Now, are you going to speak?" The old man gasped for breath, his arms hanging limply by his side. It was obvious that they had been broken. His face was pale, and there was no fear in his eyes. There was only hostility. "You dare to touch me like this? Aren't you afraid of the forces behind us taking revenge?" Du Fan smiled with a cordial look on his face. "Since you know that our master is the ghost doctor, then you should have heard of her great name. Do you think that we would be afraid of the power behind you?" Humph. No matter how strong you are, even if your master is the ghost doctor, if you dare to go against us, it will be difficult for you to leave this mainland alive. Hearing the old man's words, Hui Lang stepped forward and punched him hard in the stomach. "Old thing, you really want to die too slowly." Chapter 39:49. Du Fan looked at the old man, who was hanging upside down. Not only was blood flowing from his mouth, but blood was also flowing from his nose. However, the old man did not show the slightest bit of fear, as if he was already prepared to die. Seeing this, his eyes flashed slightly. The old man's strength could be considered an overlord, and he seemed to be an elder in the auction house. For someone like him, perhaps death was not frightening, but it would be difficult to get information out of someone who was not afraid of death. It was not that there was no way to get information out of him. After all, Other than their interrogation methods, their master also had a kind of pill that could make people tell the truth. However, that pill was not very effective for people with strong willpower like him. He thought for a while, then waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Let him go." Lu Yin did not say anything, but Hui Lang glared at him. "Let him go? Let go just like that?" "Yes, let him go." Du Fan gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. He looked at the tortured old man and said, "This can be considered a lesson for him. Let him go. If they killed him, they probably would not be able to live in peace here." Although he was just passing by, he did not want to disturb his master and the others with such trivial matters. Hui Lang wanted to say something, but seeing that Lu Yun had already put the old man down, he did not speak again. "Let's go," the three of them said as they walked out of the alley. However, they did not expect that the old man would sneer, and a sinister voice came from his mouth that was overflowing with blood. "Are you afraid? Unfortunately, it's too late." Hearing this, Du Fan raised his eyebrows and looked back at him. Hui Lang looked back at the old man with a dark face and said, "Old man, it seems that you really don't want to live anymore." They had already spared his life, but he still dared to provoke them again and again. They really did not know what he was thinking. "Should we take him back?" Lu Yin looked at Du Fan and asked. He felt that leaving the old man here would be a disaster. Who knew what he would do when he turned around? Du Fan shook his head and said, "Let's go. Don't mind him." He walked out of the alley. When Hui Lang and Lu Yin saw this, they didn't say anything more and just left with him. On the street outside, Hui Lang couldn't help but ask, "Du Fan, why did you let him go? Wouldn't killing him solve everything?" Du Fan smiled and said, "After all, he hasn't made any real threats yet. If we kill him, then even if we are reasonable, we will become unreasonable. Since he followed us today, we will teach him a lesson. If he dares to do it again, then we will just kill him." Hui Lang grinned from ear to ear when he heard him say that he could just kill him. He liked this kind of clean and efficient way of doing things. He had already given the old man a way out, and now it was up to the old man to make his own choice. However, from what he had said just now, it was obvious that he would still come looking for death. Well, it seemed that he would have to sharpen his knife when he went back. Not long after the three of them left, the cultivators outside the alley cautiously looked inside. When one of them recognized the old man as an auction house elder, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He quickly called for the people beside him to quickly send the old man back. Chapter 3950. After Du Fan and the others arrived at the inn, the other two went to rest first, while Du Fan went to Fengjiu's room to report the matter. You did well." Fengjiu nodded and said, "Using peaceful means before resorting to force is a method that no one can find fault with." Du Fan smiled and said, "But this way, I reckon that our journey won't be peaceful. I'm afraid that the two young masters will be frightened again. They won't be so timid." Fengjiu smiled and said, "You should also go and rest. They probably won't make a move here, so there's no need to be too nervous." "Yes," Du Fan replied. He bowed and retreated out of the room. Xin Yuan Mose, who was sitting in the inner room, rubbed his knees. He stood up and walked a few steps, then raised his leg to kick. He felt that his strength was not enough, and after walking a few steps, he felt a little sore, so he went to the table and sat down to rest. "You still don't have any strength?" Fengjiu asked. "It's a little sore, and I don't have enough strength," Xin Yuan Mose said as he rubbed the acupuncture points on his knees. Fengjiu thought for a moment and said, "If that's the case, then we can only find tiger bones and tendons to use as medicine." She thought to herself, but tiger bones and tendons are not easy to find. If we didn't have a falling out with this auction house, we could have used the auction house to find them. But looking at the current situation, we have to think of another way. She stood up and said, "We've been on the road these past few days, so I haven't made a medicinal bath for you to soak in. Tonight, you can soak in a medicinal bath. I'll have someone prepare it now." As she said this, she walked outside and called for Fan Lin and Qin Xian to prepare it. Xin Yuan Mose, who was in the room, saw that she had arranged for the two of them to be together again. When she returned, he asked, "You want to make them a couple?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "The two of them are very compatible. Moreover, I only pulled them together because I saw that they were interested in each other. It can't be considered a forced pair. It can only be said that I pushed the boat along. She was married and had Mose as her companion, as well as a pair of adorable children. However, the people around her were still single. As their master, if there was someone suitable, she naturally hoped that they could find their own happiness. It would take some time to prepare for the medicinal bath at night. Fengjiu first helped Xianyuan Mose with the silver needles, and then said, "Let them play with the two children. I'll go take a look. You go to bed and rest for a while. I'll come back later." "Okay," Xianyuan Mose responded. He felt that his legs were hot and numb, so he went to bed to rest for a while. The others were playing with the two children in Leng Hua's room. When they saw Fengjiu come in, they bowed to her and called out, "Master." They didn't cry, right? Fengjiu asked with a smile as she looked at the two children in their arms. "No, the two little masters are very obedient." Fengjiu nodded when she heard this. She looked at Qi Kong and said, "Qi Kong, come over here. I have something to tell you." As she spoke, she sat down at the table. Everyone in the room looked at each other, and their gazes fell on Qi Kong. When Qi Kong saw this, he walked up to the table and asked, "Master, what do you want me to do? I need tiger bones and tendons, but they're difficult to find, so I want you to go out and find out where in the city they can be found." As Fengjiu spoke, she poured a cup of tea and drank it. Chapter 39:51. With regards to something as precious as the tiger bone tendon, it could be said that one only needed to inquire a little to obtain it. After all, there were only a few aristocratic families in the city, and it was not difficult for those who wanted to obtain information. Because of this, Qi Kong returned to the inn in the evening. "Master, this tiger bone tendon can only be found at the auction house. I heard that they had just obtained it some time ago. There were a few groups of people who wanted to buy it from the auction house, but the auction house did not seem to have any intention of auctioning it." Hearing Qi Kang's words, Fengjiu nodded slightly. The tiger bone tendon can only be used as medicine when it is air-dried from the hindhoof of an adult dual-fanged northwestern tiger. Because an adult dual-fanged northwestern tiger is difficult to find, its tiger bone tendon is very precious. It is normal that they are unwilling to auction it. Fengjiu said slowly, one hand supporting his chin, the other playing with the teacup, thinking. Seeing this, Qi Kong said, "Since they don't dare to sell it, why don't I go to the auction house tonight?" The tiger bone tendon could not only restore the strength of the muscles and bones, but if it was refined by an alchemist, it could also strengthen the body's muscles and veins. Perhaps it was because of this that the auction house was unwilling to auction it. If the tiger bone tendon was refined with other elixirs and then auctioned, the price would be much higher. "No need. I'll go by myself tonight," Fengjiu said, waving his hand to dismiss him. When the sky gradually darkened, she asked Fan Lin to prepare the medicinal bath for Xianyuan Mose to soak in. She also instructed them to take good care of the two children and took advantage of the night to go to the auction house. At this time, in the auction house, there was a heavy atmosphere. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the people below did not even dare to breathe loudly. The elder in charge of the auction house was actually carried back with heavy injuries. This was like a bolt from the blue to them, and they were so frightened that their faces turned pale. The head steward waited by the elder's bedside to take care of him, not daring to be negligent. Outside the door, there were more than 10 stewards of the auction house. They looked at the tightly shut door with a heavy heart. The elder was injured to this extent. If the higher-ups were to blame them, wouldn't they also suffer a calamity? Ever since the elder was sent back, the chief steward had already sent a message to the higher-ups. However, there was still no one coming down to deal with this matter. They waited here in a panic, not knowing what to do. "They're coming! They're coming!" A steward hurriedly ran in and shouted. He quickly walked into the courtyard and stood where the others were. When the others heard his words, they hurriedly stood up straight and looked at the courtyard door. 2 gray-robed old men walked in with their hands behind their backs. Behind them were 8 cultivators with concealed auras. As soon as they walked in, the entire courtyard seemed to be enveloped by a powerful pressure. They couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to look directly at them. When the head steward heard the commotion outside, he hurriedly came out to greet them. When he saw the two old men, he bowed and respectfully bowed to them. Then he gestured for them to enter. The 8 cultivators behind them did not follow them in. They only stood in the courtyard and watched as the door was closed, blocking the view of the room inside. Only then did they withdraw their gazes. Chapter 39:52. One of the elders stepped forward to examine him. His expression was gloomy and unsightly. When the elder beside him saw this, he asked, "How are your injuries?" "The tendons and veins in both of his arms have been broken, and it's not easy to recover. His internal injuries are extremely severe. Even with top-grade pills, he'll need to recuperate for a month before he can get out of bed and walk around." As the elder who knew medicine spoke, he looked at the person lying on the bed and asked, "Who injured you to this extent?" "Fengjiu, that ghost Dr. Fengjiu." The elder on the bed gritted his teeth and spat out the name word by word. Hearing this, the two elders' expressions changed. "Ghost Dr. Fengjiu? You're talking about that Fengjiu? Fengjiu was the one who injured you?" "She wasn't the one who injured me, but it was one of her subordinates." The elder panted as he spoke. Perhaps it was because of his emotions, but his forehead was once again covered in cold sweat, and he coughed twice. When the elder who knew medicine saw this, he flipped his palm and took out a pill and stuffed it into the elder's mouth, saying, "Your injuries are not light. Don't be angry and recuperate first. We'll report this matter to the Lord. Now that they're in this city, we can't let them escape." As the elder spoke, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes, muttering, "This enmity must be avenged." The two of them went outside and gestured for the head steward to follow them. When they were outside, the two elders looked at the head steward and asked, "What exactly is going on? Tell us in detail." The head steward did not dare to hide anything and hurriedly told them about how Du Fan and the others had brought their spirit beasts and carriages to the auction house, as well as how the elder had been carried back. "You're saying that they've already fought with the Demon King, and that the Demon King's men were defeated by Fengjiu?" One of the elders asked, his eyes filled with shock. The great manager nodded his head and replied, "Yes, I heard that they lost miserably. Furthermore, there's news from the underworld that the Azura King has issued a kill order. I don't think their journey will be too peaceful." The other person was silent for a while, then said, "According to the news we've received, this ghost, Dr. Fengjiu, came to this mainland for the ancient Golden Lotus. I've also heard that she's already obtained the ancient Golden Lotus. She should have left this mainland, so why would she come here? I'm not sure about that, no matter how hard we tried." Then he hurriedly added, "However, I've sent my men to keep an eye on them." Two. Looking at the items placed in the storage room, she raised her eyebrows in surprise. She never thought that this unremarkable auction house would have so many treasures. She rummaged through the room, but did not take anything else because her goal was only the tiger bones and tendons. However, after searching for the time it takes for a joss stick to burn, she still could not find the tiger bones and tendons. She stopped and skimmed through the places that she had not searched yet. Finally, her gaze landed on a long black box on the second shelf in the corner. She walked forward and took it down. Opening it, she could not help but smile. Chapter 39:53. "So you're saying that if something goes wrong, his hands will droop weakly in the future?" This was the voice of an elder. "Yes, his injuries are in his meridians. The meridians in his arms have been broken, and it's not something that can be healed with ordinary medicine. However, according to the manager, the auction house has not sold the tiger bone tendons yet. If we use the tiger bone tendons to refine pills, it should be able to heal his hands." The other person said slowly. In the storeroom, Fengjiu's eyes flashed as she heard the voices getting closer and closer. When the door to the storeroom was pushed open, she hid in the void. The door to the storeroom was pushed open, and two elders walked in, chatting as they walked. "This ghost Dr. Fengjiu is so powerful. If the Lord goes up against her, will he be at a disadvantage like the Demon King? Last time, I heard the Lord mention that Fengjiu's strength has regressed since that big battle. It has only been a year since then, and the Demon King's strength is not weak either. I reckon that he was too careless and fell into Fengjiu's trap. If the Lord and the Demon King joined forces to deal with her, the result would naturally be different. Although that's the case, I still feel a little uneasy. After all, Fengjiu's name is too well known. Countless people have been defeated by her, and now that the ancient golden lotus is in her hands, it's really a little, you're worrying too much. We've been by the Lord's side for so long. You should know that the Lord's strength is not necessarily inferior to Fengjiu's. Furthermore, we've already reported this matter back and are only waiting for the Lord's orders. Now we just have to wait. As the two spoke, they walked to the shelf inside. When they saw that the long box that should have been placed on this shelf was not there, they couldn't help but look at each other. Did the manager say that the tiger bone tendons were placed in a long black box on this shelf? The elder who knew medicine asked as he looked at the elder beside him. The old man at the side stroked his beard and nodded. Yes, we were talking about this place just now. We've been to this warehouse before, so when he wanted to bring us here, I indicated that he didn't need to follow us. After all, this place is so big. How can we not find it? But now, where is it? Could it be that he remembered the wrong place? The old man who knew medicine looked around and walked around, but he didn't see any boxes that could contain tiger bones and tendons. The old man at the side glanced at him before calling out in a deep voice, "Head steward." When the head steward, who had been waiting outside, heard his name being called, he hurriedly bent his waist and lowered his head as he quickly walked over to the two of them. Just as he was about to salute them, he heard an inquiring voice. "What about the tiger bones and tendons? Didn't he say to put it here? Why don't I see him?" The old man asked. Hearing this, the head steward was startled. He raised his head and said, "The tiger bones and tendons are placed here." As soon as he said this, he saw that there was nothing on the shelf. He couldn't help but be stunned. How did it disappear? It was clearly here. I even came in yesterday to check. The item was clearly placed here. But it's very obvious that this item isn't here.